A white envelope, seemingly harmless, suddenly became a bombshell, shaking the very heart of Kensington Palace. Kate Middleton, the woman renowned for her composure, balance, and remarkable ability to control her emotions, for the very first time lost her steadiness. Inside the envelope lay the results of a DNA test, a thin piece of paper, yet one that carried the final secret of Princess Diana. The mother-in-law Kate never had the chance to meet, but to whom she had always felt an uncanny bond. What could be in this result that brought Kate to tears? Why would a woman so resilient, so accustomed to the relentless pressure of both the media and the monarchy, suddenly find herself on the verge of panic? What was this secret? Did it relate to the true identity of a royal family member? Or was it proof of suspicions that had been buried for decades? These questions not only tore at Kate's soul, but also carried the potential to shake the very foundations of the British monarchy. For in a system built entirely upon bloodlines and legitimacy, one single document suggesting a break in lineage would be enough to dismantle order, even to threaten the stability of the throne itself. Kate understood with chilling clarity that this truth was not simply about one individual's fate. It could determine the future of the entire kingdom. And the tragedy of it all was this: she, and she alone, held the key to unlocking that darkened door. Would she choose silence to protect her family, or dare to reveal it, plunging everyone into a storm of global media frenzy and merciless public judgment? If you don't want to miss the shocking revelations that lie ahead, make sure to subscribe to our channel. We will continue to walk with you as we pull back the curtain on the final secret Diana left behind, a truth powerful enough to change everything. That afternoon, the golden light of dusk streamed through the tall windows of Kensington Palace, casting a serene glow over Kate's study. Yet, in that very moment, the peace was shattered by a single white envelope placed neatly upon her desk. No sender's name, no trace of origin, only a hurried scrawl of handwriting across the front, paired with a deep crimson seal, one completely unfamiliar to Kate, unlike anything she had ever seen on official royal documents. A wave of unease immediately flooded her mind. Kate stared at the envelope. Doubt, anxiety, and a creeping, nameless fear began to envelop her. Who had sent it? Why directly to her? Bypassing the heavily controlled security channels of the palace? And most crucially, what secret inside required such absolute secrecy? Her hands trembled as they brushed against the paper. She hesitated, even considered setting it aside and reporting it straight to palace security. But then, a powerful instinct urged her to open it at once, as though, deep within, she already knew that what lay inside was tied to something momentous, something that could alter her destiny and that of her family. With one swift cut of the letter opener, the seal was torn. Kate held her breath. Inside was a neatly bound document, its cover page stamped with bold black words, "Confidential DNA report." Her heart seized. This was no prank, no meaningless scrap of gossip. It was scientific, precise, undeniable. Kate turned the first page. Cold, clinical lines of text and data filled her vision. Charts, reference codes, and recorded results. But it was the subheading that froze her blood. The name of Diana Spencer, the late Princess of Wales, the mother-in-law she had always admired yet mourned. And beside it, another name, a name completely unknown to Kate, absent from every official royal record she had ever encountered. In that instant, the air in the room seemed to turn to ice. The world tilted around her, her eyes locked on the words, her fingers numb and trembling so violently she could hardly grip the pages. And then, tears welled and rolled freely down her cheeks. Kate, the woman so often praised for her composure before the public eye, the woman who had endured relentless crises and scrutiny, was now powerless to hold back her emotions. No one yet knew what this unfamiliar name truly meant. But for Kate, it pointed to a terrifying possibility. Could this be evidence of a hidden relationship, a truth about Princess Diana that had never been revealed? Could this name be the key to rewriting the entire history of royal bloodlines? And most disturbingly, why had this explosive result been sent to her and not to anyone else in the royal family? The truth revealed on those pages shattered the fragile peace Kate had fought so hard to preserve. Her heart ached not only for herself, but for William, for their children, and for the legacy of Diana, the woman the world revered, yet who so often suffered tragedy. As Kate's eyes moved across the cold, clinical lines of the DNA report, the horrific truth became clear. Numbers, codes, sterile annotations, all of it carried the weight of 1,000 knives piercing her heart. The report confirmed what no one in the royal family had ever dared to admit. There existed a child of Princess Diana's blood, but one who bore no Windsor name. One absent from the royal lineage, the world had always believed to be absolute and untarnished. This was not just a medical result. It was living proof of a secret that, if exposed, could bring down the very walls of majesty surrounding the monarchy. Kate sat frozen. In her mind echoed whispers she had once overheard long ago, stories dismissed as malicious gossip, rumors brushed aside with icy smiles or sharp denials. Some had claimed Diana harbored a secret love, that she longed for freedom beyond the suffocating grip of the palace. Others had even hinted that such a love had led to a child, hidden away to protect the family's honor. Kate had always believed such talk to be fabricated tales, designed to tarnish Diana's image, the woman who was too radiant, too adored, and therefore a thorn in the side of power. But now, the DNA report in her hands had transformed those baseless whispers into undeniable truth. That unfamiliar name written in the report was proof that Diana had left behind a hidden bloodline, a missing piece that had never been acknowledged in royal history. Kate's entire body trembled. She knew that the existence of a child outside the royal name, yet sharing Diana's blood, would ignite a firestorm that could never be contained. What terrified Kate most was not only the truth itself, but its devastating power in the present moment. The British monarchy had long been crafted as a flawless symbol of tradition, honor, and unbroken bloodlines. But if this secret came to light, the public would no longer look upon the Windsors with reverence, but with suspicion, even betrayal. A hidden child meant the monarchy had deceived its people for decades. It also meant that Diana, celebrated worldwide as the embodiment of purity and compassion, would now be shadowed by a forbidden love and an unacknowledged child. Kate understood she now stood at the very center of the storm. As William's wife, as the mother of future kings and princesses, she could not distance herself from the fallout. For once the truth emerged. Public scrutiny would not stop at Diana's past. It would pierce into Kate's present and her children's future. People would ask, were Kate's children still worthy of the throne if the royal bloodline had already been manipulated, hidden, or broken? Could William, the future king, still be seen as legitimate when the ghost of a lost heir loomed so close to the House of Windsor? The fear pressed down on Kate's chest until she could barely breathe. More than anyone, she understood this truth was not an abstract threat. It was a double-edged blade capable of severing the bond between monarchy and people. If exploited, it could become the weapon that destroyed the perfect image the Windsors had spent centuries building. The room fell into suffocating silence. Kate felt as though she herself had been dragged into a ruthless game of power, one in which a single misstep could reduce everything she and William had to ashes. In her trembling hands, the DNA report seemed alive, as though whispering that the hour of truth had finally arrived. And then, in that chilling instant, one thought struck her like ice. If this truth were exposed, It would not only alter Diana's legacy, but could dismantle the very structure of the British monarchy itself. The House of Windsor, long held as a pillar of endurance, might tremble to its core, all because of a secret buried too long. The question haunted Kate without mercy. What should she do with this fateful piece of paper? Remain silent to preserve stability, or face it head-on and risk unleashing a storm that could sweep everything away? Above all, what pierced Kate's heart most was the painful admission she could no longer deny. The perfect image of the royal family was nothing more than a fragile mask. Behind the glittering facade, there might exist shadows so dark that even those within had never dared to imagine them. Kate sat frozen, her eyes locked on the DNA report as though it were burning in her hands. In the midst of her shock, memories surged back, dragging her into moments that once seemed ordinary but now carried an entirely new weight. She recalled conversations with King Charles, brief, guarded exchanges in which every word, every glance, suddenly appeared suspect. She remembered clearly how, once, when Diana's name was mentioned during a family gathering, Charles's eyes flickered with unease. He quickly changed the subject, cutting off any discussion of his first wife. At the time, Kate thought his avoidance was born of grief that had never healed. But now, with the DNA report in her hands, those glances no longer seemed like sorrow. They bore the shape of anxiety, perhaps even fear. More than once, Charles had addressed Kate in a strange tone, at once affectionate and quietly controlling. He praised her composure, her ability to maintain the family's image before the public. Back then, she took it as encouragement, recognition of her role. But now, she began to wonder, had it all been a way to keep her firmly within his grasp, ensuring she never strayed too close to truths better left buried? Doubt swelled within Kate's mind like a gathering storm. If Charles had known for years about the existence of a hidden bloodline, he would have done everything in his power to suppress it. And within that picture, Kate began to see herself as nothing more than a pawn, a carefully polished public face used to preserve the illusion of a flawless monarchy. The sense of betrayal cut deep, not only because of the terrible secret itself, but because it forced her to face the possibility that Charles, the man who should have protected his family, might have been the very first to manipulate the truth. The tensions that had long simmered between Kate and Charles over royal duties now appeared in a new light. She recalled their clashes about media appearances, about how to raise the children, about balancing family life with public duty. Once, she had dismissed it as generational difference, the rigidity of a king bound by ancient traditions. But now, she could not ignore the question. Had those conflicts simply been a cover? While his true motive was to guard a secret too dangerous to expose, every detail of Charles's behavior now seemed like a piece of a darker puzzle. His avoidance whenever Diana was mentioned, his subtle attempts to control Kate's public image, even his sudden tension whenever the press resurfaced old scandals. To Kate, they all pointed to one conclusion. Charles knew far more than he had ever admitted. A crushing sense of deception filled Kate's heart. She began to question whether everything she had worked so hard to build for her family, the peace, the public's respect, the hope for a future for William and their children, was nothing more than a fragile shell, forever at risk of shattering under the weight of a secret buried a generation ago. Outside, the last light of sunset faded and darkness enveloped the room. But the shadows inside Kate's mind were even heavier. She knew from this moment on, every conversation with Charles would be irrevocably changed. Trust had fractured, and in its place lingered a single, agonizing question echoing through her soul. Was Charles the one who had hidden this truth all along? In the days that followed, Kate could not shake from her mind the hazy memories of Diana, especially through the pages of diaries and letters once displayed at Althorpe. When she was still a young duchess, newly stepping into the royal family, Kate had visited Diana's resting place and caught a glimpse of those personal documents. At the time, they stirred only sympathy and admiration for a woman swept into the vortex of royal life. But now, they had transformed into crucial pieces of a mystery slowly taking shape. She remembered vividly a haunting line Diana once wrote, a sentence that read like a prophecy for the future. One day, she will know. When she is strong enough, she will understand why I could not speak. At first, Kate believed Diana was only lamenting her broken marriage or her private torments. But now, when she placed those words beside Charles's strange silence, they took on an entirely different weight. It was as though Diana had foreseen another woman walking the same path, and that this woman, too, would have to face the truth that had been hidden. The letters Diana had written to her closest confidant, often in trembling yet resolute handwriting, also hinted at a dangerous secret. In them, Diana complained of being watched, of having truths she could not entrust even to paper. She left scattered notes about how they will do everything to hide it, and the one who comes after me will bear the truth. At the time, most dismissed these as the anxious words of a woman trapped in the turmoil of her marriage to Charles and Camilla. But now, Kate could no longer see them as mere desperation. They became coded messages, cryptic warnings sent across time. Had Diana known of a secret so explosive it touched the royal bloodline itself, or perhaps even the king, and was every effort to control the image of the monarchy, every burden forced upon Kate as the future queen. Nothing more than a strategy to ensure that truth never came to light? Kate began to feel she was stepping into a dangerous game of chess that Diana had once played, but never finished. The more she revisited those words, the more she felt the chill of darkness tightening around her. She recalled Charles's evasive eyes, his vague remarks whenever Diana's name was mentioned, the abrupt changes of subject whenever conversations strayed toward the past. None of it seemed coincidental anymore. They looked, instead, like deliberate signs that a secret had been carefully buried. The tension between Kate and Charles grew more apparent. In the past, when he spoke of royal duty, Kate would listen quietly, determined to fulfill her role. But now, each time Charles uttered the words duty or image, she heard something else beneath them, as if he were not only speaking of public responsibility, but of the silence that had to be maintained at any cost. Kate felt trapped, not merely by the crown but by a web of lies woven over decades. Suspicion gnawed at her heart. Whenever she thought of Diana, Kate sensed an invisible bond, as though they shared the same fate. Diana had warned of a truth too dangerous to be spoken, and now, Kate wondered whether she had become the next figure in that tragic play. Diana's words, when reread in this new light, no longer seemed like private laments, but echoes from beyond the grave, evidence that she had glimpsed the truth and paid dearly for it. A shiver ran down Kate's spine as she considered the chilling possibility that the very secret Diana carried might have contributed to her untimely death. In moments of stillness, staring into the mirror, Kate realized she was no longer simply a wife, a mother, or a princess preparing for her role as queen. She was the heir to an unresolved legacy, the missing piece in a power struggle Diana had left behind. And one painful question echoed relentlessly in her mind. Was Charles the one behind the concealment of this truth? Kate's visit to Althorpe was presented publicly as a short retreat to find peace after the strains of royal duties. The media painted the image of a serene duchess seeking calm, a devoted mother momentarily stepping away from London to restore her strength. Yet behind that facade, Kate carried another mission. She was haunted by Diana's words, her bleak letters, and the scattered fragments of a puzzle left incomplete. And Kate believed that only at Althorpe, the place forever tied to Diana's memory, could she uncover the answers she desperately sought. Althorpe, with its timeless grandeur and corridors steeped in history, carried an atmosphere that was both majestic and haunting. As Kate passed through the heavy iron gates, her heartbeat quickened. This was not just a casual visit. It was a journey deeper into the secret world Diana had left behind. The silence that hung in the air made every footstep echo, as though even the walls themselves were listening, guided by an elderly butler, long loyal to the Spencer family. Kate was led to an area rarely open to the public. There, hidden behind a cleverly disguised wooden panel, she discovered a storage room. It was not large, but it was filled with boxes of old documents, dusty yet carefully arranged. On one of the boxes, Kate froze as her eyes caught the familiar handwriting. For Catherine, when the time comes, in that moment, time seemed to stand still. With trembling hands, Kate reached out to touch the inscription, feeling as though Diana herself was whispering from the past, sending a message directly to her. This was no coincidence. Diana had foreseen that one day Kate would need the truth, and she had prepared for it. Inside the box, Kate found letters tied with a faded blue ribbon, hastily taken photographs of Diana with a strained expression, and most striking of all, a thick envelope marked DNA. When she opened it, her heart clenched at the sight of medical reports. Among them was an image of a man whose resemblance to Harry was chilling. The accompanying notes suggested this was no mere coincidence, but perhaps a clue to a hidden connection Diana had once uncovered. Kate carefully turned each page, her spine tingling with every line. In one note, Diana had written, "There are things I cannot make public, but the truth will find its way to someone brave enough. Catherine, I believe that person is you." Those words now resounded as a charge, a burden far greater than any royal duty Kate had ever carried. Her emotions were a storm shock, grief, but also an overwhelming sense of kinship with Diana. The late princess had not only left her a personal archive, but a legacy of truth. Kate realized Diana had not scattered her diary entries and letters at random. They were deliberate, a trail meant for someone to follow, someone who could break the silence imposed by the palace. Yet this truth was not merely personal. If revealed, it could shake the very foundations of the monarchy's image and legitimacy. Clutching the DNA envelope, Kate's pulse raced as the weight of it sank in. She was now at the center of a conspiracy greater than anything she had ever imagined. The room was silent, broken only by Kate's uneven breaths. The dim light fell across the rows of boxes, making them look like coffins filled with secrets, waiting to be opened. From that moment on, she knew she could no longer return to being the dutiful duchess who smiled and fulfilled her role. Diana had chosen her, and that choice meant facing a truth that could change everything. Kate returned to Kensington Palace with a heavy heart, but now she carried more than suspicion. She carried undeniable evidence, the letters, the photographs, and above all, the DNA envelope Diana had left behind. She knew she could no longer remain silent. The one person who had to confront this truth was King Charles, the man who had always stood at the center of every tragedy in Diana's life. The conversation unfolded inside a closed room at Clarence House. Charles sat in his familiar velvet chair, his face flickering with unease as Kate entered carrying a folder. Without hesitation, she placed the envelope firmly on the table, her eyes cold and unyielding. "Can you explain this?" Kate asked, her voice calm, yet laced with a restrained fury. Charles frowned slightly, his gaze darting across the documents before him, only to quickly avert. "These are nothing but old theories, unfounded rumors that Diana once obsessed over. None of it is true." But Kate was not so easily swayed. She pulled out photographs, handwritten notes from Diana, tangible proof that the man did indeed exist. Her voice cracked with emotion, but her words were resolute. "Diana knew, and she left it all to me. How long do you intend to deny it?" The air grew heavy. Charles let out a labored sigh, his trembling hands gripping the armrests of his chair. At last, as though every ounce of strength to conceal the truth had drained from him, he confessed. Yes, there was someone, and yes, an agreement was made to ensure it would never come to light. But it was all to protect the crown, to keep the monarchy from collapse. The admission struck Kate like a knife to the heart. She looked directly at Charles, her anger and disillusionment surging. Protect the crown? And what about Diana? She endured isolation, pain, and lies. You let her carry it all, while the truth was buried for the sake of power. Charles remained silent, his head bowed, eyes averted, an unspoken concession that every word Kate said was true. In that moment, the image of a steadfast monarch crumbled, revealing instead a man who had chosen silence in exchange for the survival of an institution. Kate felt as if the world around her was collapsing. Her devotion to the monarchy had always been about preserving a legacy, a symbol of fairness and honor. But now, all that remained was betrayal. Diana had died in loneliness, while Charles clung to silence, complicit in a secret that, if revealed, could alter the nation's perception of the Windsor family forever. The room grew suffocating. Kate rose, gathering the documents, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. You may call it duty. I call it betrayal, not just to Diana, but to everyone who believed in the truth. Charles softly called her name, as if to explain further. But Kate was already walking away. The echo of her heels down the long corridor beat like a solemn drum, heralding the storm that was about to break. And as the door closed behind her, one haunting question lingered in Kate's mind. Could she ever forgive Charles's silence? Or was this the beginning of an inevitable confrontation? Kate returned to Kensington with reddened eyes, knowing she could not bear this burden alone. The only person she trusted to share the truth with was Prince William. That night, in the absolute security of their private room, Kate laid the DNA envelope and Diana's documents on the table. William, accustomed to his wife's composure, was shaken by the tragic expression on her face. You need to see this, Kate said, her voice trembling as she slid the envelope toward him. William opened it. Each cold line of the DNA report tore at his heart. The normally composed prince turned pale, his hands trembling. In an instant, his world collapsed. He was no longer just the heir to the throne, but once again the boy who had lost his mother in a tragedy that had never truly ended. And now, the evidence revealed that the truth was even darker than he had ever imagined. Memories of Diana came flooding back, like fragments of a shattered puzzle falling into place. He remembered the nights she cried quietly in her Kensington room, the whispered words that there were things he was too young to understand, the pained looks that were never explained. Back then, he had been too little to grasp it. But now everything formed a harrowing picture. Diana had lived in fear, trapped by secrets his father and the palace had fought desperately to bury. William gripped the paper tightly, his chest aching. Then a thought struck him like a bolt of lightning, stealing his breath. What if this truth involved Harry? The words in the report, Diana's notes, and the image of a man whose face bore an uncanny resemblance to his brother. It all overwhelmed him. He wondered, had his family's history, Harry's very legitimacy, been hidden under a fog of lies all along? Kate watched her husband, her eyes brimming with worry. She knew this moment was changing him forever. William, raised to give absolute loyalty to the crown, now stood before a brutal choice: protect the monarchy by keeping the secret, or expose it in pursuit of justice for his mother. He moved toward the window, staring out at the quiet Kensington gardens. The roses Diana had once loved swayed gently in the night breeze. A searing pain rose in his chest. How could he turn his back on his mother? when her silent cries now echoed through every page of those documents. Yet he also knew that if this truth surfaced, the monarchy could be plunged into an unprecedented crisis. William shut his eyes tightly, a tear slipping down his face. Never had he felt such torment. Within him burned two opposing fires. One, the duty to uphold the crown he had been groomed to serve since childhood. The other, the fierce longing to restore justice to the mother he had lost. The room fell silent, broken only by William's heavy breaths. Kate stepped forward, placed her hand gently on his shoulder, and whispered, "You don't have to bear this alone. I'll face it with you." But in William's eyes, the pain was still unmistakable. He knew this choice could shape the destiny of the entire Windsor family or bring it all crashing down. A haunting question burned within him, unanswered. Would William conceal the truth to protect the crown, or dare to confront it, to reveal everything and deliver justice for his mother? Princess Diana, as he wrestled with his inner turmoil, a familiar figure appeared in the corridor of Kensington. Camilla. Her eyes were icy, her smile tight yet razor-sharp, as though she had already pierced through every secret. Without preamble, she stepped straight into the room, her voice low, deliberate, calculating. "You think you're the first to stumble upon this secret?" Camilla gave a faint laugh, resting her hand on the folder, still lying open on the table. "I've known for years, and I've also known how to turn it into an advantage to secure my place." Kate froze. In that instant, she realized Diana had not only been betrayed by the monarchy, but that Camilla herself might have twisted her suffering into a weapon. Kate's voice shook, but it was the tremor of fury. "You knew, and you stayed silent? While William's mother endured loneliness and despair. You used it to climb to the throne?" Camilla didn't flinch. If anything, her gaze hardened with defiance. "If you dare expose this, remember it won't just be the monarchy that falls. Your family, your reputation, everything you've built will be destroyed along with it. Do you really want to take that gamble?" "Catherine?" The air thickened, as though an invisible rope were tightening around the room. Yet Kate, instead of retreating, drew herself tall, her eyes burning with resolve. It was silence that killed Diana. It was compromise that left her to die alone. "I will not allow history to repeat itself." Her words struck Camilla like a blow. For a moment, even she faltered. The atmosphere was taut as a drawn bowstring, a confrontation without weapons, but no less perilous. On one side, Camilla, who had wielded secrets as instruments of power. On the other, Kate, determined to shatter the silence and restore justice for Diana. And in the fire of Kate's gaze, a silent declaration of war rang out. The truth would no longer remain in chains. At that very moment, as every eye turned toward an unprecedented press conference, Catherine, the Princess of Wales, did what no royal before her had ever dared. She shattered decades of silence, ignoring threats and breaking free of protocol. Kate's voice cut through the room, every word like a blade tearing through the veil of deception woven since Diana's time. And then, the moment arrived. A man stepped out of the shadows, his features heartbreakingly familiar. The hair, the eyes, even the faintly wistful smile, every trace echoed Diana. He needed no grand speech. A simple admission was enough to shake the world. He was the hidden son of Princess Diana. The hall erupted. The man thanked Kate, calling her the only one brave enough to return Diana the voice she was denied. Yet almost instantly, he made it clear this was not the end. His presence marked only the beginning of a quest for truth and justice. Inside the monarchy, reactions split starkly. Prince William stood frozen, his eyes torn between love for his mother, loyalty to the throne, and duty to his country. Harry erupted with emotion, siding with the stranger, as though he had found the missing piece of his own grief and isolation. Charles remained silent, his face set like stone. But that silence provoked more suspicion than any denial could. And Camilla, her cold, unflinching stare revealed no shock, almost as if she had been expecting this moment all along. Outside, the public fractured into two camps. Some hailed the man's appearance as a beacon of justice, a symbol that the truth could no longer be buried. Others saw him as a dangerous threat, capable of shaking the fragile foundations of the monarchy itself. The clash of support and outrage ignited a storm of controversy, unlike anything the modern royal family had ever faced. And yet, one question loomed, suspended in the air, unanswered. What will become of Diana's hidden son? Stay with us. This story is far from over. The British royal family has always been a stage where tradition, power, and personal emotions collide in the most unexpected ways. But rarely has a moment stirred as much shock and outrage as Queen Camilla's recent decision inside Windsor. According to Palace Whispers, Camilla allegedly ordered the removal of a portrait of young Princess Charlotte, the daughter of Prince William and Catherine. At first glance, it may seem like a small, almost trivial gesture. Yet within the rigidly symbolic world of the monarchy, every detail matters, and such an act carries a weight far beyond the frame of a photograph. For Prince William, who has spent years carefully balancing his duty to the crown with his fierce devotion to his family, this move reportedly struck a nerve. The father in him saw not just a portrait being displaced, but his daughter's place within the family's narrative being undermined. Sources close to the palace suggest his reaction was swift, daring, and uncharacteristically confrontational, a sign that William may no longer be willing to quietly accept Camilla's growing influence inside the walls of Windsor. This incident forces us to ask, was Camilla's decision a calculated power play, an attempt to subtly rewrite the hierarchy within the royal family? Or was it simply an insensitive choice with disastrous optics? Either way, the consequences are dramatic. William's pushback reveals a simmering tension between the next generation of royals and the woman who has long been accused of reshaping the monarchy in her own image. What unfolded after this seemingly small act could reshape public perception of both William and Camilla, and once again remind us that, in the House of Windsor, nothing is ever just about appearances. It began with a terrifying silence. One morning, a senior staff member stopped as the faint light from London seeped into Clarence House's East Gallery, which is noted for its beautifully arranged family portraits. There was something wrong. The walls, which proved the royal line's continuity, seemed different, like a memory that had been lost. The assistant knew it right away after working for the royals for 15 years. There was no longer a photograph of Princess Charlotte's 9th birthday that her mother, the Princess of Wales, took. The picture showed a moment of pure joy and the young princess's confident, charming personality, which is why the staff loved it. Charlotte's look showed that she was more confident than her age. But the beautiful silver frame was missing. There was nothing on the wall. It had been taken out, not put back. By midday, rumors had circulated through the labyrinth of the royal home. People who were trained to be discreet used legal language to avoid direct questions. Was there a curatorial rotation? A subtle rearrangement? The truth seemed more straightforward. A topic of Charlotte's photo with her brothers, Prince George and Prince Louis, showed what the future of the monarchy will be like: stability and peace. The presentation was ruined since Charlotte's picture was absent. It was a quiet that was deafening. People who had worked for Queen Elizabeth II and King Charles understood the unwritten laws of palace optics. Portraits are more than just decorations. They show who you are and what you believe in. They stand for approval, favor, renown, and most importantly, legacy. Taking one away sends a message. A housekeeper from a household in Wales for 10 years was the first to notice the growing unease. They didn't move George's. She informed a close friend in a quiet, strained voice. Louise wasn't moved. It's just Charlotte's. Taken away like she didn't belong. The word belong was very important. Princess Charlotte, who was smart, strong-willed, and already showing signs of her late grandmother Diana's subtle charm, was discreetly taken away from her grandfather's official London home. It seemed like a planned, little but important announcement of a new order. Before nightfall, Kensington Palace got the unsettling news from Clarence House. A junior assistant at Kensington heard the story while talking about normal business with a co-worker at Clarence House. He mentioned it without thinking while going over the deliveries for the day, believing it was crucial for operations. One person who saw it happen stated the room transitioned from being busy to being quite quiet. The Princess of Wales was renowned for being calm. Yet, she felt a familiar knot in her stomach. Catherine's public and private lives are all part of a long-term strategy to provide her kids love, stability, and safety. Charlotte has always adored her family's history and the big imperial mansions they lived in. Taking her photo off without a good reason felt like a cruel and planned move. The mood turned from worry to anger when the Prince of Wales came back. He was very concentrated on the details, and his jaw tightened with each word. Taking down a little photo conveyed a bad message. It couldn't be ignored whether it was a claim of power, land, or something more personal and historical. William was in a palace where actions spoke louder than words. He observed firsthand how photos may hurt or help someone's reputation and turn people against one another. He understood what this meant. Without saying anything, he got up from his chair and proceeded to his study. The hidden storm that had been going on all day was about to burst. Queen Camilla would remember his next move, which would be discreet but important. Palace optics. More than just a frame. The royal family values pictures a lot, so knowing how much they are worth helps explain what happened. Portraiture has influenced public perception, reinforced dynastic power, and preserved royal history for centuries. The Windsors have perfected how to communicate visually, from Holbein's dramatic images of Henry VIII to the televised coronation. Royal families are now very careful about whatever pictures they choose. These are not just random pictures of relatives. Each location has a reason. A large picture of a person in a public room at Buckingham Palace or Clarence House shows how important they are and how they are related to the royal family. A former royal courtier's claims, "Nothing on those walls is there by accident." The process of selection, framing, and placement is looked at in great detail. An image of a monarch and their successor shows that things will stay the same. A picture of grandchildren represents family and the future. Taking one away, especially from a child, is like ripping up an official document. The family story is intentionally changed. Queen Elizabeth II employed this unspoken language in a smart and subtle way. The pictures on her desk during her yearly Christmas show were carefully chosen to show who was in and to show how her family had changed. Queen Camilla has been a part of royal life for over 50 years and knows how powerful it is. She has gone from being a hated mistress to a beloved queen consort, and her PR and image management have been amazing. She may know better than anybody else how an image can last. Since becoming queen, sources believe she has spent more time curating the decor of her royal residences, especially Clarence House, where she has lived with King Charles for a long period. This may lead to problems. Some staff members who have been with the palace for a long time have noted that there are fewer and fewer pictures of Princess Diana in public areas. Some people regard this as a natural step to show the current monarch and his wife, while others see it as Camilla's way of trying to get rid of her predecessor. Camilla has always had a complicated relationship with Diana's legacy and, by extension, with Diana's children and grandchildren, says a family insider. She thinks that the intense interest of the public and media in the Wales, especially Catherine and Charlotte, often overshadows her work and role. Even today, It appears like she's having trouble with spirits. In this delicate psychological setting, the removal of Charlotte's image must be thought upon. It was more than just decorating the inside. It was a power move on the royal chessboard, little, but very important. Camilla may not have thought that the player would never allow his daughter to be a pawn. The Queen's quiet command. Elegant order. It wasn't an official order. No memo. No fight. A Clarence House staffer claimed it happened during a normal afternoon meeting in the morning room. While stirring her Earl Grey tea, Queen Camilla indicated to the East Gallery with a subtle gesture, "The girl in blue doesn't fit with the room's mood anymore," she said in a calm voice. "It should be kept." Beautifully chosen words in a way that is both stylish and classy. In the room, the meaning was plain. Princess Charlotte was the girl in the blue outfit. Camilla called her story tone of the room, which is a kind way of saying it. Catherine took the picture, which exhibited her modern, friendly style that has made her and her family renowned. Some people think that the picture meant something more to Camilla, the Wales's strong and popular heritage, which began with Diana and continues with her son and his family. Princess Charlotte is developing a powerful mix of her mother's elegance, her father's sense of duty, and her late grandmother Diana's star characteristics. This vivid, constant reminder in the palace may have angered a queen who was still striving to win over her subjects. One person responds, "She has her own grandchildren. She is proud of them and has worked to make them a part of royal life, like by making them coronation pages of honor. She probably wants the focus to be on her family as it is now, with her as the head of the family. Instead of the family that might have been, the directive was given for whatever reason, whether it was to get her space back because she was feeling insecure or on purpose to show off her new authority. Royal staff were told to obey orders without question. The frame was taken off the hook, wrapped with felt, and put away within an hour. The family wasn't told anything or given any warning. There was nothing there save a child's brilliant smile. Camilla presumably anticipated that the family would think it was unimportant and that the public would overlook it. For years, she had practiced how to have a silent effect on others. In this scenario, she didn't give enough thought to how her target felt and what it meant to them. She took out a stone from a mosaic where each image is painstakingly made. She altered more than simply the wall. She had awakened the protective instincts of a parent who had lost a family member to the palace machine and was determined not to lose another. The leak that changed everything, a staffer's moral dilemma. For days, staff members muttered about the missing photo. A code of silence kept many from speaking up throughout decades of royal service. But the silence was not okay. Eleanor, a longtime servant who was loved by the Princess of Wales, broke it. In 20 years, Eleanor worked for 3 royal families. She has seen scandals and secrets buried behind polished wood and velvet curtains, but this was not the same. It was a nasty little thing to do to a youngster. She couldn't stand it. She witnessed 2 staff grab the painting as she was cleaning in a different hallway. She understood that the senior aide took instructions from the king or queen. With a duster in her fingers, she witnessed Princess Charlotte's bright eyes and confident smile fade away like old furniture. After witnessing Charlotte happily chase butterflies at Balmoral, Eleanor felt angry and protective. Why is this happening to that child? She thought about it. She fought with her conscience for 2 days. If she spoke out, she may lose her job, pension, and career. Royal staff keep secrets and cherish loyalty. But she was stuck between the institution and its current consort, or the future of that institution, which was represented by the young family at Kensington Palace. She got her opportunity when she spoke on the phone with a former co-worker she trusted, who now works at Kensington Palace as an administrative assistant. A call was made to set up the details of the event. After the business meeting, her friend said, "How are things going on your end? Is everything quiet?" Eleanor spoke gently but strongly after a short break. Not quite. They beat her. Charlotte, the photo of the gallery's birthday, is gone. As the Queen told them to, after a brief pause, the other end remarked, "You're kidding. I wish I were." Eleanor said with a shudder, "I saw it with my own eyes." It all started with one bold confession. The monarchy's informal network of loyalty and long-standing relationships disseminated the news better than any official source. Eleanor's friend told a key advisor in Kensington, who the Prince of Wales trusted. The data was given special care. It was more believable when it was compared to what other staff members had seen. Eleanor's story was confirmed as true by William's former footman. He is said to have said, "If Eleanor is talking, it's serious." She would never risk her job for a rumor. Prince William found out within 24 hours after Eleanor's call, not from flashy headlines, but from the quiet, loyal voices of the same class that had kept his mother's secrets and now watched over his children's smiles. Taking down the photograph was no longer an option. The question of why. William, who had grown up in a country where titles and tradition often hid the truth, felt he had to inquire. The king's plan and the prince's fury. It was late at night at Adelaide Cottage, the Wales's little cottage in Windsor. The kids were asleep when one of his most trusted private secretaries requested a moment. The Prince of Wales was in his study going over paperwork from the Duchy of Cornwall. The seriously-looking aide handed the prince a folded piece of paper, a short factual account of what happened at Clarence House, including confirmation of the Queen Consort's direct orders. William read it 2 times. He seemed serene, like a king. But anybody who knew him well would have recognized the signs of a storm. His jaw was hard, and his gaze was cold. He placed the paper on his desk without saying anything. William didn't care about the decor, a horrible reminder of what happened. His final trigger was hurting a family member on purpose. His teenage years, the War of the Waleses, when his mother, Diana, was pushed aside, silenced, and quietly taken out of the royal story to make room for Camilla, came rushing back to him. He watched the system consume and throw away individuals when he was young. He promised that it would never happen again while he was in charge. He spotted pictures of his family on the mantel as he walked over. George wore his school uniform with a serious face. Louis smiled and ate cake on his last birthday. And Charlotte had a braid like her mom's. He instantly moved Charlotte's picture frame, which was a little act of protection. This was more than what Camilla was worried about. It was about the system she now worked for, which still felt it could decide who was important. William made his choice in 1 hour. He wouldn't talk to the press or gossip. That was the way things were done. He would talk about this in a straightforward, open, and authoritative way. He asked his private secretary to come back to the study. He spoke in a calm yet forceful voice. "I want the official inventories from Clarence House pulled. It is important to keep track of every curatorial decision made in the East Gallery in the last month. I want names, dates, and explicit directions. Tell me more." The team labored in silence. William would not talk to his stepmother in an emotional way. He would show her evidence. As the Prince of Wales, the next king, he would use his influence in the family. Not only as an angry father. He sat with Catherine later that night. She was pale and taught the basics from her staff. "I didn't want to bother you with it until we were sure," she said in a low voice. William shook his head, and his anger turned into calm resolve. "This is too much. Kath, they don't have her on their chessboard. Our daughter is her." Catherine was sad but not sobbing. Their family was built on her quiet strength. "What are you going to do?" she asked. He responded, "I'll fix it." Camilla deleted a picture. But William would bring back a lot more. He would bring back a principle. He was ready to tell the world and the monarchy that taking Wales away would hurt its strong tradition. Confrontation. A fight over private wills. The following day, there was an unspoken sense of worry throughout Clarence House. The soft carpet hid the sound of staff members' footsteps as they moved. Everyone knew a battle was coming. The Prince of Wales was by himself as his car drove into the private courtyard. He didn't have any advisors, press secretaries, or security about him save for his driver. Visit for personal reasons, not official ones. People saw him going down the corridors, with his shoulders set and fire in his eyes. Queen Camilla looked over charity briefings in the elegant white drawing room. His Royal Highness, the Prince of Wales. "Ma'am?" a footman murmured. She looked up in horror. It was unusual for William to visit alone. He was at the door before she could get ready. She got up to greet him after years of planning. "William." A big surprise. Her appeal fell flat. William didn't smile. He didn't kiss her cheek. He was still inside the room wearing his coat. He looked at her and whispered in a voice that made her shiver. Why was Charlotte's picture taken down? A profound silence appeared to smother the rich space. A long bad moment went by. Camilla blinked, and she lost her cool. It was just a small curatorial change. "Darling," she remarked, trying to seem light even if her voice was a little strained. "We made the space feel new again." William stood steadfast. There was eye contact. The picture of George stays. Louis stays. Only Charlotte's was taken. I'll say it again. Why? His voice was quiet, yet powerful. He had never spoken to her in that tone before. It was the voice of a future king. Camilla laid her papers on the old desk to steady herself. "I didn't mean to hurt William's feelings. The problem was visual balance. You know how sensitive the press and public are." William stayed quiet while he pierced through her lies with the harsh, cold truth. "Is this about how people see things in general? Or how you see things? Stop pretending that this is about how it looks. This is about legacy. You can't change who is in this family's tale." There was an evident accusation between them that broke years of family calm. Camilla tightened up. The woman who normally had a prepared response was mute for the first time. She was facing the scary man he had become, not the spoiled child she had known. William looked at her for a few more seconds to let his words sink in. He went after making his point. He looked back from the door to offer his final non-negotiable word. "Set the image back," he said, gently but firmly. "Put it back publicly. Or I will. I promise my story will be less private." He departed, and the room was much quieter than when he got there. Something fundamental shifted in that room. A child who witnessed his mother go from the narrative had drawn a strong line. He was now a father, and he would protect the next generation with strength that no queen could equal. The triumphant return of a gilded framed portrait. The punishment was secret and planned much like the crime. There was no press release or response from the public. The message was received and dealt with within 48 hours after William's arrival. On a wet Thursday morning, a Royal Collection Trust vehicle pulled up to Clarence House. An art conservator and two of the Queen's top advisors oversaw the reinstallation, which shows how important it was. The image of Princess Charlotte was found. It wasn't put back in its original spot in the East Gallery. Instead, it was put near the bottom of the grand staircase, which is a significant home artery that family members and important visitors use often. It also got a wider, fancier golden frame. A little brass plate was affixed on the bottom with a simple but powerful message: Princess Charlotte of Wales. The future of the monarchy. It was no longer a family portrait. An official statement said it was a public acknowledgement of her value, not merely a repair. Word spread quickly among the royals about the portrait's recovery. An advisor at Clarence House said that after an internal family clarification, the Prince of Wales directly suggested the reinstallation and new visible positioning. Palace speakers understood the code. Clarification means that William set the law, and it was followed. Later that day, servants said that Queen Camilla stopped for a long time when she passed the stairs. The bold writing, "New frame," and photo caught her eye. She didn't say anything and kept going. She knew she had been outsmarted. The picture came back with more weight. It was now telling a family story without any cuts. The news gave Kensington some quiet solace. Catherine softly informed Charlotte that her picture was back at Grandpa's house. She stated that adults make errors, but love and family always mend things. Charlotte inquired plainly like a kid. "Why was it torn down?" Catherine paused before she spoke. She murmured, "Maybe they forgot how special you are for a moment." But Dad reminded them, even though it happened behind closed doors. This event changed the balance of power in the monarchy forever. The future king publicly challenged Camilla's subtle claim to power. The picture is now framed in gold and truth at Clarence House, a silent testament to a father's love and a prince's power. Things that were quietly taken away have come back with meaning. Charlotte's place in royal history is now in memory and paint, protected by a strong will. A custom-made Balenciaga bag worth tens of thousands of dollars, carrying the personal monogram of Zara Tindall, suddenly disappeared from a luxury showroom in London. Just 48 hours later, the same bag appeared in a completely different place. In the hands of Meghan Markle in the middle of Paris Fashion Week. There was no official explanation. There was no clear statement from the brand. But from that moment on, a quiet chain reaction began spreading through both the fashion world and those who closely follow the British royal family. According to leaked information from sources familiar with the luxury retail industry, the bag was believed to have disappeared in early February 2026. This was not an ordinary display item. It was a custom design, personalized specifically for Zara Tindall, the daughter of Princess Anne. That meant the bag was almost impossible to confuse with any other item on the market. Yet only a few days later, images of Meghan Markle appearing at Paris Fashion Week with a Balenciaga bag that looked almost identical quickly spread across social media. Observant fashion followers immediately recognized the distinctive monogram detail. From that moment, questions began to emerge. Why would a bag custom-made for a member of the royal family end up in Meghan's hands? What exactly happened during that brief period between London and Paris? And more importantly, why, after the incident, several sources within the industry suggested that Meghan Markle had quietly been placed on a blacklist by certain luxury fashion houses. While the public was still trying to piece the story together, the reaction from Zara Tindall's family also drew significant attention. Princess Anne and Zara remained completely silent in front of the media. Yet that silence itself was interpreted by royal watchers as a very clear message. So was this an unbelievable coincidence, or the beginning of a much larger scandal that both the royal family and the fashion world would rather keep out of public view? What do you think about this story? Comment number 1. If you believe Meghan created trouble for herself. Or comment number 2, if you suspect that there may be another hidden hand quietly influencing events behind the scenes. But to understand why a single bag could create such a powerful ripple effect, we need to turn back the clock to the early days of February 2026. For many years, Zara Tindall has been seen as one of the most unique figures within the British royal family. Not because she holds a powerful position in the line of succession, and not because she frequently appears on the front pages of tabloids. On the contrary, it is Zara's quiet and steady presence that has earned her public respect. As the daughter of Princess Anne and the granddaughter of Queen Elizabeth II, Zara grew up within the royal environment but chose a rather different path. She does not use a royal title in her daily life, and much of her career has been connected to professional sport. In the international equestrian world, Zara Tindall is not regarded as a notable figure simply because of her royal background. She built her reputation through her own achievements. At the London Olympic Games in 2012, Zara won a silver medal in the team eventing competition. That achievement made her one of the very few members of the royal family to stand on an Olympic podium through personal athletic merit. In the years that followed, Zara continued to maintain the image of a professional athlete while building a relatively private family life with her husband, former rugby player Mike Tyndall, and their children. Because of this, in the eyes of many royal observers, Zara has almost become the symbol of what some call an anti-drama royal. She rarely appears in public controversies. Her name has hardly been associated with any major scandal for many years, even during periods when the royal family faced serious media crises. Zara maintained a clear distance from those conflicts, perhaps for that very reason. Even the smallest details of her life are usually handled with great care, especially when they involve official events. According to several sources within the luxury fashion industry, the Balenciaga bag mentioned in this story was not an ordinary accessory. It was a custom design created specifically for Zara Tyndall. The bag was reportedly crafted from high-grade crocodile-embossed leather, finished by hand with refined gold-plated metal details. More importantly, the body of the bag carried Zara's personal monogram, a clear sign that it had been produced as a private custom order rather than a commercial product. According to the original plan, this bag had been prepared for an important gala event that Zara was expected to attend during the spring of 2026. That is why it was kept in a private display area of the Balenciaga showroom in London, waiting for the day it would be officially delivered. But then, just a few days before that event was supposed to take place, everything suddenly changed. The incident began with a rather vague internal notice from the Balenciaga showroom in London. According to sources familiar with luxury retail operations, the bag custom-made for Zara Tyndall was confirmed to have disappeared during what was described as the logistics handling process. That was the explanation used in the initial report. There were no signs of forced entry. No security alarms had been triggered, and there was no official confirmation that the bag had been delivered to the wrong client. In the world of luxury brands, the phrase logistics error is often understood as a problem in internal transportation or inventory management. However, in this case, several details made that explanation difficult to accept. The Balenciaga bag created for Zara was not an item stored in a normal warehouse inventory. It was a custom design with a personal monogram and was kept in a specially managed section of the showroom. Items of this type are usually tracked by internal codes and rarely leave their location without formal confirmation of delivery. According to a source within the fashion retail industry in London, the disappearance of a custom item intended for a VIP client without leaving any trace is extremely rare. In many cases, major brands even maintain stricter control procedures for such items than for regular merchandise. For that reason, as soon as the bag was confirmed to be missing from the storage area, the management team reportedly began reviewing the entire process of transportation and delivery that had taken place in the preceding days. The reaction from Zara Tyndall was said to be quite calm. People familiar with the family indicated that she had been informed about the issue shortly after the showroom discovered the problem. However, instead of responding publicly or creating media pressure, Zara was believed to have chosen a quiet approach. This is also the way she usually handles sensitive situations. There was no official statement. There were no complaints in the press. All communication reportedly took place through private channels between her representatives and the brand. But what made this story truly unusual was not the disappearance of the bag itself. The real shock came from what happened afterward. According to image records from Paris Fashion Week, just 48 hours after the London showroom confirmed that the bag had disappeared, Meghan Markle appeared at a fashion event in Paris carrying a Balenciaga bag that looked almost identical. This immediately attracted attention within the industry. The period of 48 hours was even shorter than the average time required for a round trip between London and Paris when accounting for transportation, delivery procedures, and customer verification within luxury retail systems. Fashion observers quickly compared the images from Paris with the internal description of the custom bag prepared for Zara Tyndall. Details such as the crocodile-embossed leather, the size of the bag body, and the decorative metal elements appeared almost identical. But the detail that drew the most attention was the personal monogram engraved on the surface of the bag. When these images began circulating within internal groups in the fashion industry, staff at the Balenciaga showroom in London reportedly recognized the issue almost immediately. And from that moment, according to several industry sources, the real nightmare had only just begun. As the images from Paris Fashion Week began appearing across media platforms and within private fashion industry groups, some employees at Balenciaga in London quickly noticed something unusual. At first, the attention came mainly from individuals familiar with the custom product created for Zara Tindall. They recognized several highly specific details: the crocodile-embossed leather, the distinctive metal lock structure, and most importantly, the placement of the personal monogram engraved on the body of the bag. According to a source familiar with the brand's internal operations, these images were forwarded quickly among management departments across the European region. In luxury fashion houses, monitoring product appearances in the media is a common process, especially when custom designs are involved. For that reason, the discovery of the bag in Paris was not a random coincidence, but rather the result of regular media monitoring procedures. What immediately drew the attention of brand executives was not only the bag itself. The person carrying the bag was also a critical factor. Meghan Markle at that time was not a brand ambassador for Balenciaga. She was also not included in the list of clients granted access to the brand's custom products. Within the system of high fashion houses, this distinction is extremely important. Personalized items are usually linked to a specific client and rarely appear in the hands of another person unless there has been a formal transfer. According to several sources in the industry, before the incident occurred, Balenciaga had held informal discussions about the possibility of future collaboration with Meghan Markle. This is quite common in the world of luxury fashion. Brands often evaluate potential partnerships with influential public figures before making an official decision. Such discussions can last for many months and are usually kept confidential. However, after the images of the bag began circulating widely, that process reportedly changed very quickly. A source within the fashion industry in Paris stated that within just 24 hours after the images were confirmed, all discussions related to Meghan Markle were completely frozen. From being a name under consideration on a list of potential partners, Meghan was reportedly removed from the evaluation process. For luxury brands, this was an unusually fast decision. Normally, changes in partnership strategy happen gradually and are rarely made within such a short period of time. But in this case, according to people familiar with the industry, the appearance of a custom product in the hands of someone who was not its owner created a reputational risk that the brand did not want to continue pursuing. Meanwhile, the reaction from Zara Tindall was completely different. There were no social media posts, no information leaked to the press from the family. Royal watchers noticed that Zara continued her normal daily activities without publicly mentioning the incident. Yet that silence attracted even more attention, because instead of creating a public dispute, Zara seemed to choose a completely different way of handling the situation, a quiet approach, but one that could create a far wider impact. After Balenciaga confirmed that the custom bag created for Zara Tindall had appeared in images from Paris Fashion Week, an internal review process was quickly activated. However, what stood out was that Zara's response followed a style very familiar to those who know her. According to a source close to the family, Zara did not apply media pressure and did not make any public statements. Instead, her representative simply contacted the brand directly and asked a rather simple question: "Where is my custom bag now?" That question forced Balenciaga to conduct a more detailed review within its system. Relevant departments began examining the entire record of shipments, delivery schedules, and product loan requests during the period before the bag disappeared. In the luxury fashion industry, it is quite common for celebrities to borrow accessories for events or photo shoots. However, such arrangements always require clear contracts and are closely monitored by the brand's public relations department. According to people familiar with the review process, Balenciaga did not find any official record showing that the bag created for Zara Tindall had been legitimately loaned out. There was also no documentation confirming that Meghan Markle was a brand ambassador or had authorization to access this custom design. Some sources in the industry believe that this detail was what caused brand managers to begin considering the possibility that the bag had been used in an unauthorized context. Meanwhile, Meghan Markle's appearance with the bag continued to attract media attention. Only a few days after Paris Fashion Week, Meghan released a short teaser for a new media project titled Love with Meghan. In this promotional video, the Balenciaga bag appeared quite clearly in several frames. For many fashion followers, it looked like another display of Meghan's familiar luxury lifestyle. But for those observing the situation from within Balenciaga, the repeated appearance of the bag made the story even more complicated. The contrast between the two images also began to attract attention from observers. While Meghan continued to appear in media coverage and on social platforms promoting personal content, Zara Tindall maintained her normal schedule. A few days later, she attended another gala event connected to sport and charity. The Balenciaga bag was never mentioned. There were no signs that she wanted to turn the situation into a public controversy. It was this difference in approach that many people began to notice. One side continued to appear in personal media campaigns and seemed not to address any controversy. The other side remained almost completely silent and allowed the issue to be handled through private channels. However, as the story began spreading through fashion circles and communities that closely follow the royal family, another figure was said to have started paying attention to the situation, and that was Princess Anne, a woman long known for her discreet style, but also for making very decisive decisions when necessary. As the story of the Balenciaga bag spread through fashion circles and royal watching communities, many observers believed the royal family would maintain its usual silence. However, according to several sources familiar with royal circles, Princess Anne was reportedly the first person to question the wider impact of the incident. For many decades, Anne has been known as one of the most practical and disciplined members of the British royal family. She rarely participates in public media debates. Yet she holds considerable influence in decisions related to the image and responsibilities of family members. Therefore, when information about the bag and Balenciaga's reaction began circulating in private circles, Anne was said to have suggested a small internal review. According to royal sources, this review was described as a family-only review. Its goal was not to conduct a public investigation or criticize any individual, but rather to reassess how members of the royal family appear in relationships with brands and commercial partners. In recent years, as the boundaries between personal image, business activities, and royal reputation have become increasingly complex, some members of the family believed that clearer principles were necessary. One concept reportedly mentioned during this process was the idea of a non-engagement protocol. This was not an official regulation announced publicly, but rather an internal principle used to identify relationships that the royal family chooses not to engage with. In simple terms, if an individual or a project is considered likely to create controversy or negatively affect the image of the family, other members will avoid any form of collaboration or joint appearance in related activities. During this review process, several other royal figures were also mentioned as examples representing a more stable and discreet public image. Zara Tindall, who has long maintained distance from controversial commercial activities, was viewed by many observers as a clear example. Alongside her were Lady Louise Windsor and Sophie, the Duchess of Edinburgh. All three share a similar approach. They rarely appear in major commercial promotional campaigns and maintain a careful and reserved public image. According to several sources within the European fashion industry, this internal review quickly attracted the attention of major brands. Not because the royal family directly issued any request, but because luxury fashion houses closely monitor how the royal family positions its public image. In the world of high fashion, attaching a brand name to a public figure can bring enormous value, but it can also become a risk if that figure becomes involved in controversy. Within that context, several changes began to appear quite quickly. Sources familiar with the fashion industry said that within only a few weeks after the story of the bag spread widely, several potential collaboration discussions with Meghan Markle suddenly stopped. Three names frequently mentioned in internal industry conversations were Chanel, Dior, and Burberry. There were no public statements from these brands, but according to many observers, the disappearance of those negotiations was seen as a clear signal. If these reports are accurate, then, within a relatively short period, Meghan was believed to have lost at least 3 major opportunities in the luxury fashion industry. In a field where brand endorsement contracts can be worth millions of dollars and last for many years, that change was significant. What is remarkable is that this entire process happened almost completely in silence. There were no press conferences. There were no public criticisms from any member of the royal family. Yet those familiar with the way the family operates understand that sometimes silence itself carries the strongest message. And as brands began adjusting their strategies, another effect slowly started to appear. The initial decisions made by a few major fashion houses began to create a chain reaction throughout the industry. As a result, within a short period of time, what many observers described as blacklisting began spreading like a row of falling dominoes. After several collaboration discussions with Meghan Markle were reportedly halted, fashion observers began noticing another change happening quite rapidly. While the door to partnerships seemed to close for Meghan, many brands began showing greater interest in royal figures whose public image appeared stable and free from controversy. And within that list, Zara Tindall emerged as a natural choice. For luxury fashion houses, the most important factor when selecting representatives is not simply fame. What they seek is long-term reliability, a figure who can appear in public without bringing unexpected media crises. For many years, Zara Tindall has almost perfectly matched that standard. She has a clear athletic reputation, a stable family life, and a fashion style that is elegant without being excessive. According to several sources in the European fashion industry, after the controversy surrounding the Balenciaga bag began spreading, some major brands reviewed their lists of figures they wished to associate with in the future. Chanel was one of the names most frequently mentioned in internal industry discussions. Previously, there had been rumors that Meghan Markle might become a suitable figure for campaigns aimed at the North American market. However, after the series of events at the beginning of 2026, those discussions were reportedly not continued. Instead, attention began shifting toward other members of the royal family, particularly those whose public image is closely connected with tradition and stability. Zara Tindall quickly became one of the most frequently mentioned names, not because she actively sought fashion contracts, but because her image matched the way brands wished to build stories around refinement and heritage. Within a relatively short time, Zara's appearances in public also began attracting greater attention from international fashion magazines. She appeared in a major feature in Harper's Bazaar discussing the elegant style of members of the British royal family. Fashion editors emphasized that Zara represents a very different image compared with many modern celebrities. Not loud, not chasing media trends, yet maintaining steady influence over many years. Traditional events such as Royal Ascot also became moments when Zara's image received greater attention. In photographs appearing in the press, she often chose outfits with a classic style combined with refined accessories. This matched the way many luxury brands seek to connect their image with long-established values of British culture. According to several sources familiar with the fashion industry, from February to March 2026, Zara Tindall reportedly received more than 5 invitations for collaborations or event appearances from major luxury fashion houses. These invitations were not always formal advertising contracts. In many cases, they could be invitations to attend private fashion shows, collection launch events, or special media projects. However, the sudden increase in invitations over a short period clearly demonstrated the industry's growing interest in her public image. Meanwhile, the situation for Meghan Markle was described in a completely different way. Sources in the industry said that after the controversies at the beginning of 2026, many brands chose to maintain distance. There were no public announcements about ending cooperation, but there were also no new projects confirmed. In the world of high fashion, such silence is usually understood as a very clear signal. The contrast between these two trends attracted the attention of many media analysts. On one side was an image increasingly strengthened through traditional events and quiet support from brands. On the other side was an almost complete absence from major campaigns in the fashion industry. However, according to several sources familiar with people close to Meghan Markle, the story did not end there. When she realized that collaboration opportunities were gradually disappearing, Meghan was believed to have begun considering new steps to respond to the situation. And that was when the first warnings reportedly began to appear. According to several sources in the media industry, Meghan had started mentioning the possibility of stronger legal and media actions if the story continued to damage her reputation. As opportunities for collaboration in the fashion industry began to slow down, some media sources reported that Meghan Markle chose a different response. Instead of continuing to remain silent, she was said to have sent several private messages to acquaintances within the industry, suggesting that if the Balenciaga bag story continued to harm her reputation, she might reveal additional sensitive information related to connections between the royal family and the fashion world. These messages were not public statements. They appeared in the form of private letters and confidential conversations. However, in an industry where rumors travel very quickly, within a short time, many people became aware that Meghan was considering the possibility of leaking further information if necessary. Some observers believed this was an attempt to create media pressure, forcing brands and related figures to reconsider their positions. However, the response from the royal family was quite different from what many people expected. According to sources familiar with internal palace circles, those messages received almost no official response. There were no public denials. There were no lengthy explanations. Royal media advisors were believed to have chosen their familiar strategy: silence and continuation of normal duties. Some royal watchers suggested that this strategy was not surprising. Throughout the hundreds of years of the British monarchy, the royal family has faced many media crises far greater than this one. From political scandals to personal controversies involving family members, they have learned to manage pressure through patience and careful control of information. For that reason, for many people within the palace, threats of information leaks from a single individual were not considered enough to alter their strategy. Meanwhile, another detail unexpectedly drew public attention. During a conversation on the sidelines of a charitable sporting event, Zara Tindall was reportedly heard making a brief remark to a group of reporters. The sentence quickly spread across social media. Some ride horses. Some ride headlines. Although the remark did not mention anyone directly, many people believed it clearly reflected the difference between two lifestyles. Zara is known as a professional equestrian athlete. Her life is connected to competitions, sports activities, and family. Meghan Markle, by contrast, often appears in media campaigns and entertainment projects. For that reason, even a single short sentence was enough to trigger widespread speculation in the media. At the same time, according to several royal sources, Princess Anne was also believed to have sent a private personal message. It was not an official warning, but rather something closer to discreet advice. The message was described as revolving around a simple idea. Within the royal family, long-term legacy is always more important than short-term advantage. Those familiar with Anne's way of thinking believe this reflects a principle she has maintained throughout decades of public service. What was notable is that despite the reported threats of information leaks from Meghan, there were almost no signs that members of the royal family felt pressured. Some media analysts even commented that the British royal family has experienced far greater crises throughout its history, from controversies in previous centuries to events that shocked the entire world. They have repeatedly passed through difficult periods without responding directly to every criticism. For that reason, the recent warnings appeared to create little change in the way they handled the situation. The palace continued to maintain silence. Official duties of the family continued as usual, and stories within the fashion industry continued spreading in their own way. And when observers looked back at the entire chain of events from the Balenciaga bag to the reactions that followed, many began to realize that everything was gradually leading toward a rather clear conclusion. As the controversy surrounding the Balenciaga bag slowly faded from the surface of media attention, other developments began attracting the notice of observers. These events were not directly connected to the bag, but they revealed a broader picture of the positions held by the figures involved in the story. In particular, the growing contrast between the way Meghan Markle faced public pressure and the way other members of the royal family handled similar situations. During that same period, the organization Archewell, the charitable foundation associated with Meghan and Prince Harry, was reportedly facing several questions related to financial procedures and tax reporting in the United States. According to sources familiar with legal matters, such reviews are not unusual for large nonprofit organizations. However, when information about tax record examinations began appearing in the media, it contributed to increasing pressure surrounding Meghan's public image. At the same time, many observers noticed that Meghan seemed to appear less frequently at major fashion and entertainment events. There was no official announcement stating that she had been removed from any list, but in an industry that relies heavily on relationships and private invitations, prolonged absence is often interpreted as a sign of gradual isolation. Meanwhile, in Britain, the public image of several other members of the royal family was strengthening in a completely different direction. Catherine, Princess of Wales, after a period of absence due to health reasons, began returning to several important public events. One of the most widely discussed appearances was when she wore again an evening gown associated with the legacy of Queen Elizabeth II during a formal ceremony. For many royal watchers, that choice was not simply about fashion. It carried a clear symbolic meaning. The reference to the image of Queen Elizabeth was seen as a way of emphasizing the continuity of royal tradition during a time when the family is experiencing many changes. At the same time, Zara Tindall continued maintaining her familiar rhythm of life within the world of sport and charitable activity. Princess Anne also maintained her demanding schedule of hundreds of public duties each year. These three figures began to be mentioned together in many media analyses, not because they appeared as part of a coordinated strategy, but because the way they managed public pressure showed several similar qualities. According to many observers, the common thread connecting Zara, Anne, and Catherine lies in their discretion and discipline. They rarely respond directly to controversies. Instead, they focus on their work and allow their public image to be built gradually over time. This approach creates a rather clear contrast with the way Meghan Markle often appears in the media. Television projects, personal campaigns, and stories centered around her personal experiences frequently attract strong attention. But they also make her image the focus of intense debate. This difference has led many people to begin speaking about a kind of quiet alliance within the royal family. It is not a formal agreement, but rather a shared understanding about how to protect the image of the family before the public. One side emphasizes duty, discretion, and long-term legacy. The other is more closely tied to media attention and personal storytelling. And when the entire chain of events is placed together, from the Balenciaga bag to the shifts in the fashion industry and public perception. That contrast appears to become even clearer. Looking back at the entire story, many people realize that everything began with what seemed to be a very small detail. A Balenciaga bag that had been specially prepared for Zara Tindall disappeared from a showroom in London. But within a short period of time, the incident triggered a series of reactions. From a suspicion within the fashion industry, the story quickly spread into the media, influenced partnership negotiations, and eventually became a test of how the public views two very different images within the royal world. On one side stands Meghan Markle, a figure who constantly attracts the attention of international media. Her television projects, personal initiatives, and the way she tells the story of her life often create major waves of discussion. Yet that same attention sometimes forces luxury brands to carefully consider potential reputational risks. On the other side stands Zara Tindall, no royal title in her everyday life, no loud media campaigns. Most of her time is connected to sports, family life, and charitable activities. Yet it is precisely this stability and discretion that leads many brands to see her as a symbol of traditional elegance. According to what sources within the fashion industry have revealed, within about 6 weeks after the story about the bag began to spread widely, the situation changed quite clearly. Meghan Markle was reportedly close to losing most major collaboration opportunities within the world of high fashion. Meanwhile, Zara Tindall began receiving increasing invitations to appear at events and media projects organized by major fashion houses. For many observers, this shift is not simply the story of a contract or an accessory. It reflects the way the fashion industry evaluates two completely different interpretations of what royal elegance means. From a single bag to the decisions made by major brands, this story ultimately opens a larger question. What truly defines the image of a royal figure in the modern era? Is it fame and the ability to capture media attention? Or is it patience, discretion, and a long-term sense of responsibility? If you have followed this entire story to this point, let us know what you think. Press like if you believe Zara Tindall represents the royal style the public wants to see. And do not forget to subscribe to follow the Royal Insider series, where we continue to explore the lesser-known stories behind royal events. And return to the question raised at the beginning. Do you think this was a personal mistake by Meghan Markle? Or is there a larger factor behind the story? Comment number 1 if you believe Meghan created this situation herself. Or comment number 2 if you believe other forces may be quietly influencing the outcome. Because after everything, royal history often shows one very clear truth. Royalty is not defined only by blood. It is defined by what a person chooses to do when the media spotlight is gone. And this time, silence seems to have spoken louder than any public statement. Thank you for watching until the end, and we will see you again in the next video. Another royal story is waiting to be revealed. You will not want to miss it. For many decades, the British royal family has been carefully presented as a symbol of stability. But in recent weeks, behind the gates of Buckingham Palace, the atmosphere is said to be very different. According to several royal sources and reports published in March 2026, the royal household is facing a chain of developments that even longtime observers describe with a single phrase. They are beside themselves, confused, anxious, and unable to believe that everything is happening at the same time. At the center of this shock is King Charles III. The king is believed to still be continuing a quiet battle with cancer. The palace has tried to keep information to a minimum. But every time the schedule changes, every time a royal event is cancelled, more questions appear. Is the king's health truly as stable as official statements continue to claim? Meanwhile, another scandal has erupted and made the situation even more tense. The king's younger brother, Prince Andrew, has once again become the focus of investigations and controversial reports. News of his arrest in early reports created a new wave of shock, prompting the public to question the credibility and crisis management ability of the entire royal family. In that context, speculation has begun to spread. Some observers believe that if the situation continues to escalate, the pressure could force the royal household to reconsider the way power is managed. And when the future of the crown is mentioned, the two names most often discussed are Prince William and Catherine, Princess of Wales. Are they quietly preparing for a larger role sooner than expected? That is also the question dividing public opinion. Do you believe King Charles III will overcome this period and continue to reign for many more years? Or does the monarchy need a major change to protect its image and stability? Comment number 1 if you believe the king is still strong enough. Or comment number 2 if you think it is time for the royal family to modernize quickly. And now, let us look deeper into what is really happening behind the closed doors of the palace. For many months before the recent positive updates appeared, the health of King Charles III had become one of the most discussed subjects among royal observers. Everything began with the first leaked information that the king was undergoing treatment for cancer. The official statement from the palace at the time was brief and cautious. It confirmed only that the illness had been discovered during a medical examination and that treatment had begun immediately. However, the lack of detail in those early announcements unintentionally created an information gap. And within that gap, rumors quickly spread. Some British tabloid newspapers at the time used words such as struggling to describe the king's condition. Television analysis even questioned whether his reign could be significantly shortened. On social media, speculation went even further. Some people suggested that the royal family was panicking behind the scenes. Such comments spread quickly, especially whenever the king's schedule was adjusted or cancelled. In that environment, the relative silence of the palace only increased public curiosity. Long-time observers of the British monarchy understand that the royal family traditionally avoids releasing too many details about the health of the sovereign. But this time, the scale of public attention seemed far greater than anything the palace had faced before. What is notable is that despite undergoing treatment, King Charles III has continued to carry out many important duties within his capacity. He has still appeared at official meetings, still signed state documents, and still maintained communication with the government. This suggests that the king's condition may not be as serious as some of the speculation circulating online. A major turning point appeared toward the end of 2025. In a rare message released in December, the king shared more details about his treatment for the first time. He described the early results as good news. According to the king, the illness had been detected at an early stage, which played a decisive role. Doctors were able to begin treatment before the disease had progressed too far. As a result, the treatment process began to show positive responses. In that message, King Charles III also used a striking phrase. He described the early diagnosis as a personal blessing. The sentence was quickly quoted widely across British media, not only because it sounded deeply personal, but also because it reflected a broader message. The king wanted to turn his experience into a reminder about the importance of regular health examinations. Royal advisors later explained that the king is now entering what they call a precautionary phase. This means the treatment process is continuing, but the intensity has gradually been reduced as signs of recovery become clearer. Some royal duties are still adjusted to fit the treatment schedule, but overall the king is believed to be responding well to modern medical methods. This information immediately changed the atmosphere in discussions about the future of the British monarchy. For many months before that, many people had begun to ask whether an early transfer of power to the next generation might be inevitable. But when positive signals began to appear, analysts started to become more cautious in their predictions. However, what made the statement from King Charles III particularly notable was not only his personal condition. The king also emphasized a figure that surprised many people: According to medical statistics in the United Kingdom, more than 50% of people face a risk of developing cancer at some point in their lives. This number is not new to the medical community, but when it was repeated by the monarch himself in the context of his personal story, the media impact became far more powerful. Health organizations in the United Kingdom reported that after that message, the number of people registering for health examinations and cancer screening increased significantly in many areas. Some doctors even suggested that this effect could help save thousands of lives in the long term. When a highly influential figure, such as the monarch, shares a personal experience with illness, the message often spreads faster than any public awareness campaign. Within the royal family, the positive signals about the king's health were said to bring a certain level of relief. Sources close to the palace said that the tense atmosphere during the first months of treatment had eased considerably. Long-term plans of the royal household, including international visits and major charitable initiatives, began to be discussed again with cautious optimism. Even so, that does not mean all pressure has disappeared. While the story of King Charles III's health has gradually moved in a more positive direction, a series of other issues within the royal family have continued to erupt in the media. Investigations connected to Prince Andrew, debates about the public image of the monarchy, and questions about the long-term future of the crown continue to appear almost every week. For that reason, the overall picture of the British royal family today still has two sides. On one hand, the health of the king appears to be improving thanks to early detection and effective treatment. On the other hand, the political and media pressure surrounding the royal family has not diminished, and it is precisely within that contrast that the next chapter of the story begins to take shape. Because even as the king's health gradually stabilizes, the undercurrents created by family scandals continue to rise, pushing the monarchy into a new and difficult period. While positive news about the health of King Charles III began to ease the atmosphere within the royal household, another event suddenly erupted and quickly captured the full attention of the media. The figure at the center of this shock was Prince Andrew. For many years, he has been accustomed to becoming the focus of controversy. But the most recent developments in early 2026 pushed the story to an entirely different level. According to reports that appeared in February 2026, Prince Andrew was temporarily detained by authorities for about 11 hours in connection with an investigation related to allegations of misconduct in public office. This is a serious accusation within the British legal system, typically used when an official is suspected of abusing a position of authority to share sensitive information or improperly influence public decisions. The focus of the investigation revolves around claims that during the period when he served as a United Kingdom trade envoy, Prince Andrew may have shared certain sensitive information with Jeffrey Epstein. Although no official conclusion has been announced, the reappearance of the Epstein name in investigative documents immediately triggered a new wave of controversy around the world. After 11 hours of questioning, Prince Andrew was released. However, sources say that the investigation is still continuing. This means his legal situation has not yet been fully resolved. For the British royal family, the mere fact that a senior member was detained for questioning is already a significant shock to the institution's public image. Media analysts in the United Kingdom believe that the public reaction this time has been much stronger than during previous scandals. One reason is that the name Jeffrey Epstein has become a symbol of one of the largest scandals involving international elites in many decades. Any powerful figure believed to have connections with Epstein immediately faces intense public scrutiny. After being released, Prince Andrew is believed to have withdrawn into a relatively private life at Sandringham House, one of the most famous royal estates. According to several sources who have followed the royal family for many years, he has almost completely avoided public appearances and has minimized social activities. People close to him describe his state of mind as highly tense after the intense wave of criticism from the media. Some longtime sources even say that during earlier periods of intense pressure, royal advisors once worried about Prince Andrew's mental health. At one point, it was said that he was being closely monitored to ensure his personal safety. Although these reports were never officially confirmed, they continue to be mentioned whenever a new scandal appears. What is notable is that the debate surrounding the case is not focused only on Prince Andrew himself. It has also opened a larger argument about how the media and the public treat different powerful figures. Some commentators argue that the reaction toward Andrew has become a form of pile-on. This term is used to describe a situation in which many media organizations simultaneously focus criticism on a single individual, causing public pressure to multiply rapidly. Those who support this argument often point to a controversial comparison. They refer to the previously reported connections between Bill Clinton and Jeffrey Epstein. Some reports indicate that Clinton appeared on flights or at events connected to Epstein on several occasions. However, according to critics who believe the media response has been unfair, the level of public criticism directed at Clinton does not appear to be as intense as what Prince Andrew has faced. Of course, such comparisons have also been challenged by many analysts. They argue that each case involves different legal and political contexts. However, the fact that this debate exists shows how sensitive the entire issue has become. For the British royal family, the scandal becomes even more uncomfortable when looking back at Prince Andrew's position in the history of the family. When he was born in 1960, he was the second son of Queen Elizabeth II and Prince Philip. During many of his early years, he was regarded as one of the most important figures in the line of succession. In fact, there was a time when Prince Andrew stood in the second position in the line of succession to the throne. At that time, only his older brother, King Charles III, stood ahead of him in the order of succession. This reflects a very different period in royal history. At that time, Andrew's future seemed closely connected to major public roles for many decades. But over time, everything changed. The birth of new royal generations gradually pushed his position lower in the line of succession. When Prince William and later the children of William were born, the order of succession continued to shift. By the year 2026, Prince Andrew was believed to be in the 8th position in the line of succession to the throne. This number is often mentioned in analyses as a symbol of the dramatic change in his status. From a prince who once stood close to the throne, he became a figure almost separated from official royal activities. The situation became even more complicated when some documents related to the Jeffrey Epstein case continued to be released in recent years. These documents, often referred to collectively as the Epstein files, sparked new debates about individuals who once appeared within Epstein's network of relationships. Each time a new document was mentioned, the name of Prince Andrew appeared again in newspaper headlines, even when there was no new information directly connected to him. Experts on royal media say this is an extremely difficult situation for the palace. On one hand, they must maintain the principle of not interfering in legal investigations. On the other hand, every day that the scandal continues to appear on the front pages of newspapers damages the overall image of the monarchy. In that context, the role of King Charles III becomes particularly sensitive. As the head of the family and also the monarch, he must balance his personal responsibility toward his younger brother with his duty to protect the reputation of the royal institution. Some observers believe that for this reason, Prince Andrew has almost completely stopped participating in official royal activities in recent years. Limiting his public appearances has been seen as an effort to separate his personal scandal from the image of the entire monarchy. However, the detention in February 2026 shows that the story is not yet finished. Every new development in the investigation has the potential to trigger another wave of controversy. For the British royal family, that means the media pressure continues to accumulate. For that reason, the scandal surrounding Prince Andrew is no longer simply the story of one individual. It has become a major test of the entire royal family's ability to manage a crisis. And while the investigation has not yet reached a final conclusion, its impact has already spread to the very center of power within the monarchy. Because in the end, this scandal does not affect only Prince Andrew. It also places direct pressure on the shoulders of King Charles III and the entire British royal family. While the scandals connected to Prince Andrew continue to generate waves of controversy, many royal observers have begun to notice another trend quietly developing inside the British monarchy. It is the clear rise of a group of figures who are increasingly seen as the stable pillars of the family. Three names frequently mentioned in recent analyses are Prince William, Catherine, Princess of Wales, and Anne. Princess Royal. At a time when the image of the monarchy is being tested by many challenges, their presence is viewed as an important source of stability. What is particularly notable is that each of them brings a different type of influence, from personal image and public experience to the ability to maintain the trust of the people. The case of Catherine, Princess of Wales, is a typical example. In recent months, her health once caused concern among the public when news of her cancer treatment was announced. For many months, her absence from royal activities became a major topic of discussion in newspapers and on social media. However, when Catherine gradually returned to public events, the public reaction showed that the level of interest in her was far greater than many analysts had predicted. Royal journalists have observed that the return of Catherine, Princess of Wales, has been marked by a clear sense of confidence. Her recent appearances are often described with words such as radiant, calm, and relaxed. This creates a strong contrast with the difficult period earlier, when her health became the focus of many rumors. Some media experts believe that Catherine genuinely enjoys her public role. Unlike some members of the royal family who have appeared uncomfortable with media attention, she often shows a natural ease when participating in charitable activities, meeting members of the public, or representing the royal family at international events. This sense of comfort has helped her image become one of the most positive symbols of the new generation of the monarchy. Alongside Catherine's return is the clearly growing influence of Prince William. For many years, William has been seen as the future heir of the monarchy. However, in the recent period, many observers believe that his role is no longer limited to the position of heir alone. Royal analysts in London often use a particular phrase to describe the way Prince William is expanding his influence. They call it the softly approach. This strategy is quite familiar in the history of the British monarchy. Instead of openly claiming a leadership role, the heir gradually takes on more responsibilities when the reigning monarch needs to reduce the workload. Some people compare this process with the final period of the reign of Queen Elizabeth II. During the last years of her life, King Charles III, who was then the Prince of Wales, began to assume more responsibilities in official activities. That helped the transition of power proceed relatively smoothly when the moment of change finally arrived. Today, some observers believe that Prince William is in a similar phase. He appears more frequently in diplomatic meetings, takes part in large-scale social initiatives, and is increasingly viewed as the face representing the future of the British monarchy. One number mentioned frequently in recent analyses has also drawn attention. According to several political commentators in the United Kingdom, if the health of King Charles III remains completely stable and his reign lasts as long as many once predicted, Prince William might have to wait 20 years or more before truly becoming king. However, the developments of the past few years have created a different situation. Some analysts argue that William is now being given far more latitude than heirs to the throne usually had in the past. In other words, he has more space to shape his personal projects, promote social initiatives, and build his leadership image starting now, alongside William and Catherine. Another figure who is often mentioned as a stable pillar of the royal family is Anne, Princess Royal. For many decades, she has been regarded as one of the hardest-working members of the royal family. Royal journalists sometimes refer to her as the secret weapon of the monarchy. The reason is quite simple. While many other members of the royal family attract attention through media image or personal stories, Anne has built her reputation mainly on persistence and discipline. From the 1970s until today, Anne, Princess Royal, has taken part in thousands of public events and charitable activities. People who have worked with her often describe her as direct, practical, and not particularly interested in ceremonial display. This style has earned her considerable respect from both the public and the organizations she represents. Another factor that makes Anne an important figure in the current period is experience. After more than half a century of royal service, she has lived through many different phases of change within the monarchy, from the era of Queen Elizabeth II to the current reign of King Charles III. She has consistently maintained a steady role behind the scenes. Some analysts believe that the combination of these three figures is helping the royal family maintain balance during a difficult period. Catherine, Princess of Wales, brings a positive image and emotional connection with the public. Prince William represents the future leadership of the monarchy. And Anne, Princess Royal, provides experience and long-term stability. Of course, that does not mean every challenge has disappeared. The British monarchy still faces many questions about its role in the 21st century. Debates about the cost of maintaining the monarchy, transparency, and the modernization of the system continue to appear in the press. However, many observers believe that without figures such as Prince William, Catherine, Princess of Wales, and Anne, Princess Royal, the recent pressures might have caused far greater damage to the image of the royal family. Their presence at least helps create the sense that the monarchy still has trustworthy faces to represent the future. And that partly explains why, despite scandals and controversies, the level of public support for the royal family in some surveys has not declined as sharply as many once predicted. In other words, these figures are acting as a stabilizing network for the entire system. They are not only keeping royal activities functioning, but also helping maintain public confidence during a period of turbulence. With such support, many people believe that the British monarchy still has the ability to withstand the current crises. At the same time, however, another debate is gradually emerging alongside this stability. Outside the palace, more voices are beginning to argue that the monarchy needs deeper change if it wants to adapt to a new era. While the controversies surrounding Prince Andrew have not yet settled, another debate that is even more sensitive has begun to appear in the British press. This time, the question is no longer focused only on the personal reputation of royal family members, but touches directly on a core issue of the monarchy. It concerns the order of succession to the throne. For many centuries, the rules of succession within the British royal family have been built on a relatively simple principle. The heir is determined by bloodline and order of birth. Major changes to this system rarely occur, and usually require complex legal procedures. However, the developments within the royal family in recent years have led some politicians and commentators to question whether the current system is still appropriate. One of the figures at the center of this debate is Prince Andrew. After many years of scandals and controversy, his position in the line of succession has become an uncomfortable subject for many people. According to the current order, Andrew stands in the 8th position in the line of succession to the throne. In theory, the possibility that he would actually become king is extremely small. However, the fact that his name still appears on the list has made many activists and several members of the British Parliament feel uneasy. In February 2026, several British newspapers revealed that the government had begun examining the possibility of changing the law to remove Prince Andrew from the line of succession. Although these discussions are still at a very early stage, the information immediately created a strong wave of debate. Any change to the rules of succession could create a major precedent for the future. Some sources from the royal press have even suggested that Prince William is believed to support the idea of removing Andrew from the line of succession. These sources have not been officially confirmed, but they reflect a reality that the younger generation within the royal family is increasingly concerned with protecting the long-term image of the monarchy. For many supporters of change, their argument is quite clear. They believe that continuing to keep figures who have been involved in serious controversies within the line of succession could weaken the credibility of the entire system. In the age of global media, the reputation of the monarchy depends greatly on the personal image of each member. For that reason, several constitutional scholars have proposed a rather new idea. According to them, the right of succession could be linked more closely with the performance of royal duties. In other words, only members who actively participate in royal work should maintain a position in the line of succession. Those who withdraw from official duties or live entirely outside the system could be removed from this list. That idea quickly led to another name, Prince Harry. At present, Harry stands in the 5th position in the line of succession to the throne. After stepping back from the role of a full-time working royal and moving to live in the United States, his presence on this list has also become a subject of debate. Some commentators argue that if the new principle were applied, Harry could fall into the group of individuals considered for removal from the line of succession. The reason they present is his departure from royal duties and his frequent public criticism of the royal family. However, proposals such as these have also faced strong opposition from many sides. Some conservative commentators warn that changing the rules of succession because of media pressure could create a dangerous precedent. Among those who have spoken out against the idea are commentators with views similar to Lady Colin Campbell. They argue that the rule of law should not be adjusted simply because of temporary waves of public opinion. Opponents argue that if the removal of a member from the line of succession can occur merely because of political or media pressure, then the principle of long-term stability within the monarchy could be undermined. Some people have even compared the situation with the era of McCarthyism in the United States, when political decisions were sometimes influenced by mass sentiment rather than careful legal procedure. In addition, changing the rules of succession is not as simple as many people imagine. An important number often mentioned in analyses is 14. That is the number of countries outside the United Kingdom that share the same monarch within the Commonwealth system. Any change to the law of succession in Britain would also require the agreement of all these countries. This means that if London wants to amend the rules of succession in order to remove a specific member, the process could take many years and would require legal coordination among several different nations. The most recent time such a major change occurred was when the succession law was amended to end the preference for sons over daughters in the order of succession. If Andrew or Harry were truly removed from the line of succession, the structure of the succession order would change significantly. At present, Prince Andrew stands in the 8th position, while Prince Harry stands in the 5th. If both were removed, those who stand behind them would move forward by one place. This could bring members such as Anne, Princess Royal or Prince Edward, Duke of Edinburgh, closer to the center of the succession list, although the possibility that they would actually inherit the throne remains very low. The change would still carry important symbolic meaning. In the case of Harry, some commentators present another argument. They say that his references to issues related to racism within the royal family have created considerable impact on the image of the Commonwealth. Some people even suggest that if tensions within the Commonwealth are to be reduced, Harry could voluntarily withdraw from the line of succession. However, many others argue that forcing an individual to give up the right of succession simply because of personal statements would create a complicated precedent. From a legal perspective, the right of succession is determined by national law and bloodline, not by the level of political agreement. For that reason, the current debate still has no clear answer. Some politicians believe that adjusting the law of succession is necessary to protect the image of the monarchy in the age of modern media. Others argue that the stability of the system is more important than any short-term benefit in the media. While these debates continue in newspapers and in political corridors in London, the royal palace maintains a cautious position. According to long-standing tradition, the royal family rarely comments directly on matters related to the law of succession, because this area falls under the authority of Parliament and the governments of the Commonwealth. However, the mere fact that such discussions are taking place already shows the level of pressure that the British monarchy is currently facing. In a world where every action of royal family members is analyzed in detail, questions about reputation and personal responsibility are becoming increasingly important, whatever the final result of this debate may be. One thing is almost certain: any change to the system of succession will influence the image of the monarchy for many decades to come. That is also why the current debate is being closely followed, not only in Britain but also in many other countries within the Commonwealth. No matter how intense the arguments may become, the British monarchy is still regarded as one of the oldest and most influential symbols within the modern political system. After all the controversies, the rumors, and the investigations surrounding the British royal family, many observers believe that the entire picture should be viewed in a more balanced way. Over the past few months, the public has continuously seen shocking headlines, issues related to Prince Andrew, debates about the order of succession, and questions surrounding the future of the monarchy. Yet, if each event is separated from the rapid flow of news, another reality also begins to appear. It is a picture that does not contain only crisis, but also signs of stability and adaptation. At the center of this picture remains the health of King Charles III. When information about the king's cancer was first made public, many people believed it could mark the beginning of a prolonged period of instability for the royal family. In modern British history, the health of the monarch has always been closely connected to the stability of the system. For that reason, any sign that the king's condition might worsen could easily trigger speculation about a transfer of power. However, recent updates suggest that the situation may not be as pessimistic as many once believed. According to royal sources and previous official statements, the king's treatment is progressing in a positive direction. Doctors reportedly detected the illness at a relatively early stage, and the body's response to the treatment plan has been described as encouraging. This has significantly reduced the pressure on the royal institution, which has already been facing multiple challenges at the same time. From a broader perspective, the king's situation also offers an important lesson for the public. In several past statements, King Charles III emphasized that early detection of disease can make a very significant difference. Medical statistics in the United Kingdom show that more than half of the population may face the risk of cancer during their lifetime. But if the illness is screened and detected at an early stage, the success rate of treatment can increase considerably. Some medical experts even suggest that the king's decision to make his diagnosis public has helped raise community awareness about the importance of regular health screenings. After the palace released the initial announcement, many medical facilities across the United Kingdom reported a noticeable increase in the number of people registering for cancer screening. In that context, the king's personal story has become not only a matter concerning the royal family, but also an influential example for society. Alongside the king's health situation, many observers also believe that the royal family is showing a higher level of unity during this difficult period. Key figures such as Prince William, Catherine, Princess of Wales, and Anne, Princess Royal, are believed to have expanded their roles in official duties. For the public, the image of Catherine, Princess of Wales, has become especially symbolic during this period. After going through her own cancer treatment, her return to public events has been seen by many as a positive sign. It is not simply the return of a royal family member. It is also the image of an individual who faced a serious health challenge and returned with confidence. Meanwhile, Prince William is increasingly viewed as a central figure of the next generation within the royal family. Many analysts believe that in recent years, William has gradually taken on more responsibilities, particularly in areas related to the environment, mental health, and social issues. This transition of roles has happened carefully and without sudden disruption, something many consider an appropriate approach for a long-established institution such as the monarchy. At the same time, the role of Anne, Princess Royal, has also been frequently mentioned in recent analyses. With more than half a century of experience in royal duties, she is widely regarded as one of the most reliable members of the family. Many experts believe that Anne's stability and experience have helped the monarchy maintain a strong image during a period of considerable turbulence. Looking more broadly, the events of the past few years have also raised an important question about the future of the British monarchy. Does this system need to change in order to adapt to modern society? And if so, how quickly should those changes take place? Some commentators argue that the monarchy must reform quickly in order to maintain public support in the 21st century. Others warn that the stability of the monarchy largely comes from its ability to change carefully and step by step. Throughout history, the British royal family has adjusted many of its rules and traditions, but it has rarely implemented changes too suddenly. For that reason, many analysts believe that the most realistic path may lie somewhere between those two viewpoints. The monarchy can continue to modernize, but in a controlled way and through clearly defined legal processes. This approach allows the institution to adapt to a changing society while still preserving the traditions that form its identity. When looking back at the entire story, from concerns about the king's health to family scandals and debates about the laws of succession, it becomes clear that the British royal family is going through a rare period of testing. At the same time, these events also demonstrate the ability of an institution that has existed for centuries to adapt to political and social change. And at this very moment, as debates continue and the future of the monarchy is examined from many different perspectives, a larger question begins to emerge. After all the recent turbulence, how will the British royal family enter the next chapter of its history? After everything we have just analyzed, from the health of King Charles III to the controversies surrounding Prince Andrew, and the increasingly visible role of Prince William and Catherine, Princess of Wales, one thing is becoming clear. The British royal family is entering an important period of change. The question now is very simple. Which direction do you support? Please comment number 1 or number 2 as asked at the beginning of the video. If you want to follow more investigative analysis like this, please like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Despite facing many storms, the British monarchy continues to endure, thanks to loyalty and the ability to adapt. Thank you for watching. See you again in the next video. For many decades, Buckingham Palace has been regarded as one of the most tightly controlled centers of information in the United Kingdom. Every official statement is carefully considered. Every small detail related to members of the royal family, especially the children, is protected almost absolutely. But sometimes, even that system of control cannot completely prevent unusual signs from slipping out. The story began with a series of small details that at first seemed unrelated, yet they quickly attracted the attention of royal watchers. Within a short period of time, several high-level internal meetings were scheduled with unusual urgency. Close aides to the king were called in late at night. Some planned royal engagements were quietly adjusted without any clear public explanation. According to sources who closely follow royal activity, King Charles and Prince William were both present at a private discussion inside Buckingham Palace during that period. There was no press release. No photographs were released. This was not entirely uncommon within the royal household. Yet the tense atmosphere surrounding those involved suggested that this was far from an ordinary meeting. What made the situation even more surprising was the subject believed to have been discussed during that exchange. According to several reports, the conversation was directly connected to Prince Louis, the youngest son of Prince William and Catherine. At the time, Louis was only 7 years old. For many years, the public had known Louis as the cheerful and playful child who often brought light-hearted moments to royal events. Yet behind those smiles, some sources suggested that the family might have been facing an issue that deeply concerned the palace. The situation became even more puzzling when two important figures within the royal family appeared almost entirely absent from the discussions connected to the matter. Catherine, who is known to be deeply devoted to her children, remained completely silent in the face of circulating rumors. At the same time, Queen Camilla, who often plays a central role in shaping the royal family's communication strategies, also made no public move. It was this silence that raised questions among observers. Some began to wonder whether a deliberate effort to control information had already been set in motion within the palace. And if that were the case, who had made the decision to keep everything behind closed doors? Some royal watchers believe that Camilla could have been the architect behind a strategy of containment, a method the royal household has often used to prevent sensitive matters from spreading into the public domain. Others believe that King Charles might have been aware of the situation many months earlier and chose to handle it quietly in order to protect the image of the family. So who do you think carries the greatest responsibility for this silence? Camilla, with her familiar strategy of information control, or King Charles, who may have known the truth for months? Leave the number 1 in the comments if you suspect Camilla, or leave number 2 if you believe Charles is the one who truly stood behind the decision. And to understand what led to that closed-door discussion inside Buckingham Palace, we need to go back to the events that happened several months earlier. It was during that earlier period that the first signs of this story began to appear. In any family, the first person to notice small changes in a child is usually the mother. In the case of Prince Louis, several sources who follow the royal household believe that Catherine was the one who first noticed the unusual signs. It was not a dramatic event. There was no accident that immediately drew attention. It was simply a series of very small changes in the boy's daily routine. Louis has long been known as the most energetic of the 3 children of Prince William and Catherine. During public events, he often appears lively, curious, and sometimes mischievous enough to make the entire family laugh. Because of that, when Louis began to grow quieter at certain moments at home, Catherine quickly sensed that something might not be entirely normal. At first, the signs were difficult to notice. According to accounts from individuals who had close contact with the family, Louis would sometimes suddenly fall silent while playing. On several occasions, he would stop in the middle of an activity, place his hand on his side, and appear uncomfortable. It was not severe pain. There were no obvious symptoms that would immediately lead someone to suspect a serious medical condition. But for Catherine, those small details could not be ignored. For many years, Catherine has been known as a mother who is deeply involved in the care and upbringing of her children. Unlike the distant image that once characterized earlier royal generations, she has tried to build a close family environment and carefully observes even the smallest changes in her children. Because of that, when these signs repeated themselves several times within a short period, the instinct of a mother began to warn her that this might not simply be ordinary fatigue in a young child. According to sources close to royal operations, Catherine suggested that Louis should undergo an early medical examination. For her, it was a cautious and reasonable step. Yet within the environment of the royal family, even decisions related to personal health are not always determined solely by the immediate family. Some palace communication advisors were reportedly concerned. They believed that taking a young royal family member for specialized medical examinations could quickly attract the attention of the press. Just a single photograph or a small piece of leaked information could trigger widespread speculation across international media within a matter of hours. Within the royal household, the concept of optics is often mentioned in situations like this. It refers not only to the reality of an event, but also to the way the public perceives it. A royal child undergoing an urgent medical examination could trigger a wave of concern, even if the actual problem might not be serious. According to several royal observers, this factor alone made the decision-making process far more complicated than it would be for an ordinary family. Catherine was believed to have emphasized that an early examination was necessary in order to rule out every possible risk. But palace officials worried that any medical step could easily be interpreted as the beginning of a crisis. What drew particular attention was the period of time between the moment Catherine first noticed the unusual signs and the moment the matter was seriously addressed. According to several sources who follow the internal workings of the royal household, Catherine began to worry after only about 3 weeks, when the symptoms shown by Louis appeared repeatedly. However, discussions within the palace were believed to have continued for much longer. One striking number was later mentioned in several analyses. While Catherine believed that action should be taken almost immediately, some advisors suggested waiting several more months in order to assess the situation and avoid creating unnecessary public alarm. According to those sources, the proposed delay could have reached as long as 4 months. For Catherine, this was believed to be an extremely difficult period. She not only had to watch her son condition day by day, but also had to participate in complicated discussions about how the information should be handled. Those who have closely observed the workings of the royal household say that Catherine rarely shows open disagreement with the palace advisory system. Yet, when the matter involves her children, her position tends to become much clearer. Some royal commentators believe this may have been one of the rare moments when Catherine felt she had to fight harder within the institution itself. Not because of power or public image, but because the instinct of a mother cannot easily accept delays when her child's health may be at risk. In that situation, Prince William was also believed to be caught between 2 powerful pressures. On one side stood the royal advisory and communications system, which has always placed great importance on maintaining a stable public image. On the other side were Catherine growing concerns, as she watched every small change in Louis' behavior. What made the story even more notable was that while Catherine was trying to push for an early medical examination, not every influential figure inside the palace wanted the matter to come into the light too quickly. Some believed that controlling the flow of information was the best way to prevent a wave of speculation that could affect the entire royal family. And it was precisely at the moment when Catherine was said to feel almost as if she were fighting alone to protect her son that another figure within the royal household was believed to be quietly playing a key role in extending that silence. This figure was not someone who frequently appeared in public debates, yet her influence over how the palace handles communication crises has been mentioned many times in the past. It was at that point that the name Camilla began to surface in private conversations behind the closed doors of the palace. As Catherine's concerns about the health of Prince Louis became more serious, a broader discussion began to form within the royal household. This was no longer simply the story of a mother worried about her son. It quickly became a matter connected to how Buckingham Palace manages sensitive information. And within those private discussions, Queen Camilla was believed to be one of the most influential voices. For many years, Camilla has become a significant figure in the way the royal family manages communication crises, not through public appearances or official statements. Her influence usually operates behind strategic decisions, where communication advisors and senior officials discuss how and when information should be released. According to several sources who follow the internal workings of the palace, when the unusual signs surrounding Louis began to be discussed more seriously, Camilla was believed to have supported a familiar strategy within the palace system. That strategy was containment, which means keeping information under strict control until the palace is ready to present an official narrative. The reason for this approach was not entirely difficult to understand. A health issue involving a young member of the royal family could quickly become a topic closely followed by international media. With just a single leak, hundreds of theories could appear within a matter of hours. For an institution that places stability of image above almost everything else, controlling the story from the beginning has always been considered essential. But in the case of Louis, this strategy created visible tensions within the family itself. According to some royal observers, Camilla and advisors close to her feared that any information related to Louis' health could provoke a strong reaction from the public, not only because Louis is the grandson of the king, but also because he stands within the royal line of succession. Some individuals inside the palace believed that if news about a serious medical issue spread too early, the media could quickly turn it into a crisis narrative. Speculation about the future of the royal family might appear, and that could affect the image of stability that the reign of King Charles has been trying to build. For that reason, according to several sources, a series of private meetings were organized to discuss how the situation should be handled. These meetings were usually attended by senior advisors, palace communication representatives, and several key members of the royal family. Camilla was believed to have taken an active role in those exchanges. During these discussions, one strategy was mentioned repeatedly. It was the idea of extending the time before any information was publicly confirmed. If Louis required medical observation, it could be handled privately. If the press began to ask questions, the palace could provide general explanations. For example, they might say that the boy was suffering from a cold or simply needed rest after the busy schedule of the family. According to sources who followed this situation closely, that approach created a significant period of delay. Some royal commentators later said that Camilla was believed to have participated in or organized at least 5 private meetings related to managing information surrounding the condition of Louis. The main objective of those meetings was to find ways to buy more time before any public decision would be made. That extended period was believed to last as long as 6 months. For the palace communication system, 6 months could be the time needed to prepare every possible scenario. But for those directly within the family, especially Catherine and William, that delay was believed to be extremely difficult to accept. According to several royal observers, Prince William in particular was not satisfied with the way the situation was handled. For many years, he has tried to build the image of a royal generation that is more transparent and closer to the public. Because of that, delaying information about a matter involving his own son could make him feel that the palace system was placing image above the interests of the family. Some sources suggested that during internal discussions, William expressed clear frustration. He believed that examining and confirming the health condition of Louis should be prioritized above all communication considerations. Meanwhile, communication advisors and those who supported the strategy associated with Camilla argued that moving too quickly could cause the palace to lose control of the narrative. These disagreements did not necessarily occur in a loud or public way, but they reflected a larger debate within the British royal household. One side believed that transparency would help build trust with the public. The other side believed that controlling information remained the best way to protect the institution from powerful media storms. During that entire period, the public knew almost nothing about what was happening behind the doors of the palace. The rare public appearances of Louis did not reveal anything clearly unusual, and whenever questions were raised, royal spokespersons usually offered only very general responses. However, strategies of information control rarely last forever. The more people become involved in monitoring and discussing a situation, the greater the risk that information will leak. And in the case of Louis, that moment eventually arrived, because when the official diagnosis began to be confirmed internally, all calculations about timing and communication strategy became far less important. Once the truth began to emerge, the situation was no longer simply a story about controlling information. That was the moment when everything inside the palace began to change completely. After many months of debate within the palace, the medical examination process was finally carried out more seriously. The initial evaluations that had once been seen as cautious steps quickly turned into a series of more specialized tests, and it was at that moment that doctors began to mention a possibility that no one in the royal family wanted to hear. According to several sources, later cited by royal observers, medical experts discovered signs suggesting that Prince Louis might be facing a rare neurological disorder. This is not a common condition in children, and it is often very difficult to detect during the early stages. The first symptoms can be extremely subtle. Sometimes they appear only as brief episodes of pain, small changes in physical coordination, or moments when a child becomes unusually quiet. Because the early signs are often unclear, the diagnostic process for such conditions usually takes a long time. Doctors must observe many different factors before reaching a conclusion. In the case of Louis, what drew particular attention from medical specialists was the combination of pain around the rib area, moments of distraction, and several minor signs related to movement. According to medical experts who have explained rare neurological disorders in children, these types of conditions can affect many different aspects of the body. In some cases, they influence physical coordination. In other cases, they may affect how the brain processes information, making it difficult for a child to concentrate or respond quickly to the surrounding environment. These early findings quickly made the atmosphere inside the palace far heavier. If the suspicions of the doctors were correct, the problem would no longer be simply a temporary condition. It could be an illness that develops over time. According to some royal commentators, it was precisely that possibility of progression that made internal discussions more tense than ever before. Because within the context of a royal family, the health of a child is not only a personal matter, it also touches on larger questions about the future and the role of members within the line of succession. One of the next steps that doctors were believed to have proposed was to examine possible genetic factors. This led to a series of discussions about the medical history of both sides of the family. During those conversations, the name Spencer was also mentioned. The Spencer family, the lineage of Princess Diana, has long been an important part of the story of the modern royal household. According to several sources who followed the discussions, medical experts reviewed genetic records across multiple generations of the family in order to rule out the possibility that the condition might originate from a rare hereditary factor. This is a standard procedure in many cases of neurological disorders, especially when symptoms appear at a very early age. But alongside the medical evaluations, another debate also began to emerge within the royal household. If the condition of Louis truly proved to be a long-term progressive illness, how might that affect his position within the line of succession? Under current rules, Louis stands behind Prince George and Princess Charlotte in the line to the throne. This means that under normal circumstances, the likelihood of him becoming king is extremely small. However, a position within the line of succession still carries significant symbolic meaning within the structure of the monarchy. Some royal observers suggested that the question raised in private discussions was not whether Louis could one day become king. The larger question was whether a member who might face serious medical difficulties in the future should continue to hold an official position in the line of succession. Debates of this kind are almost never made public. But in institutions as old as the British monarchy, matters related to the ability to carry out royal duties are always considered with great caution. While these complex discussions were taking place at higher levels, another aspect of the story unfolded within the closer circle of the family. According to several sources close to the household, Louis began to notice that something unusual was happening around him. There were more visits to doctors, more serious conversations among adults, and a sense of worry that children can sometimes feel even when nothing is clearly explained to them. One detail that many commentators later repeated was a question that Louis was believed to have asked during a conversation with his parents. It was a very simple question, yet it made the adults around him think for a long time. He asked whether he was still a prince. That question reflected a very difficult reality for any family. When a child begins to realize that a health condition might change many things, questions about identity and place within the family often appear very early. According to several medical experts who have studied similar cases, rare neurological disorders can progress slowly over many years before clear symptoms appear. In some situations, the early signs are very mild and only become more noticeable when a child enters adolescence. One figure that reportedly caused particular concern within the palace emerged during medical discussions. According to the initial assessment of doctors, if this truly was a progressive neurological disorder, around 70 to 80% of the symptoms could become more visible when Louis reaches the age of 18. This would mean that in the worst-case scenario, he might require medical support and long-term care in the future. Information like this does not only raise questions about the health of a child, it also forces the entire structure of the royal household to confront a difficult reality. And for Prince William, who has always tried to protect his family from the pressure of the royal system, this moment became a breaking point. Because faced with the information presented by doctors, continuing to remain silent no longer seemed like a choice that could be extended much longer. When the initial medical evaluations regarding the condition of Prince Louis began to be presented more clearly in internal meetings, pressure inside the royal family started to concentrate on one person more than anyone else. That person was Prince William. As the father of Louis and also the direct heir to the throne, William stood at the intersection of the two greatest responsibilities in his life. On one side was duty to the monarchy, on the other side was his own family. According to many royal observers, William had already been unhappy with the way the palace delayed information during the previous months, but when more serious medical conclusions began to appear, that frustration was believed to have turned into a firmer position. He no longer saw this as a matter of communication management. For him, the issue had become honesty and the priority given to family. One detail that attracted attention in several reports was that William began asking questions about when King Charles had actually learned about the medical suspicions surrounding Louis. Within the royal system, important information is usually reported to the monarch quite early, especially matters involving members of the line of succession. According to some commentators, William gradually realized that the medical discussions may have been presented to Charles before he himself had been fully informed. That does not necessarily mean that the king intentionally concealed information, but within the complex system of the palace, advisors sharing information according to levels of hierarchy is not unusual. However, for William, even that possibility was enough to make him raise very direct questions. According to several sources who followed internal developments at the time, William requested a frank conversation with his father at Buckingham Palace. That exchange was described as one of the most tense conversations between the two generations of the royal family since Charles became king. Those familiar with William's approach say that he usually avoids direct confrontations within the family. But this time his position was believed to be very clear. If the palace continued to delay action regarding the condition of Louis simply to protect the image of the monarchy, he would not accept it. According to several sources, later cited by royal journalists, William spoke very directly and said that his priority was not the throne. His priority was his family. This is a position he has mentioned many times in previous interviews. But in this situation, the meaning of those words became far more powerful. During the conversation with Charles, William was believed to have referred to the memory of his mother, Princess Diana. For many years he has said that one of the most important lessons he learned from Diana's life was that family should never be sacrificed for the pressures of the royal system. According to several commentators, that memory has made William particularly sensitive to situations in which he feels the palace is placing image above people. And when the story involved his own son, he did not want to repeat what his mother once experienced. One of the most striking details that later appeared in behind-the-scenes discussions was that William mentioned the possibility of giving up his own position in the line of succession if it ever became necessary. This would be an extremely serious statement in the context of the British royal family. By tradition, voluntarily giving up a position in the line of succession has almost never happened in modern times. The most famous example often mentioned is when King Edward VIII abdicated in the year 1936 in order to marry Wallis Simpson, but even that event created a major constitutional crisis. For that reason, when information appeared suggesting that William had seriously discussed the possibility of changing his position in the line of succession, many observers saw it as a sign that the level of tension inside the family had reached a very high point. Another figure mentioned by several royal journalists later made the story even more remarkable. According to some sources, William was believed to have exchanged private letters with 3 members of Parliament at Westminster in order to discuss possible constitutional scenarios if he ever decided to step away from the line of succession in the future. If this information is accurate, it would represent an unprecedented step in more than 300 years of British royal history. Matters related to the succession to the throne are usually handled entirely within the royal family and the government. For a direct heir to actively explore the possibility of changing his own position would be something almost never seen before. According to constitutional analysts, conversations like these do not necessarily mean that William was preparing to leave the royal family, but they do show that he wanted to understand every possible option before making any decision that could affect his family. In that situation, King Charles was believed to have found himself in a very difficult position. As king, he must consider the stability of the monarchy. But as a father and a grandfather, he also understands that William was reacting from genuine concern for his son. Some sources close to the palace said that the conversation between father and son ended in a heavy atmosphere. Charles was believed to have spent a long time afterward thinking about how to balance the responsibility of a king with the feelings of a father. People who have worked with Charles for many years say that he has always been very sensitive to matters involving family. And in this situation, the pressure from both sides may have made the moment particularly difficult for him. But just as the tense dialogue between 2 generations of the royal family seemed to reach its peak, another factor suddenly appeared. Another member of the family, someone long known for honesty and discipline, began to intervene in the story. That person was Princess Anne. As tension inside the royal family began to spread after the arguments between Prince William and King Charles, another figure quietly began reviewing the entire story from a different perspective. That person was Princess Anne. For decades, Anne has been regarded as the most disciplined and practical member of the Windsor family. She rarely takes part in public controversies, but she is known for carefully reviewing internal records before reaching any conclusion. According to several sources who follow royal affairs, it was Anne who requested to review the full records related to the initial medical examinations of Prince Louis. These documents included not only doctors' reports but also administrative notes showing when information was transferred to each level within the palace system. What attracted Anne's attention was not the medical content itself, but the timeline of the reports. In large institutions, such as the British royal household, every important document is marked with the time it is received and approved. When Anne examined these records closely, she was believed to have discovered a detail that made the entire story far more complicated. One of the initial reports about neurological signs related to Louis had been sent to higher levels much earlier than the moment when William and Catherine were fully informed. According to several sources later mentioned by royal journalists, the file had even been marked with a special status. Access to the document had been locked at a high security level within the internal archive system. This meant that only a very small number of people inside the palace had permission to see the full content of the report. Even more notable was the timing of that decision. The file had been locked under an internal directive around 6 months before the deeper medical examinations officially began. For people familiar with how the palace operates, this detail suggested a clear possibility. Early information about the condition of Louis may have been reported to the king much earlier than expected. if that was correct. King Charles may have known about the medical suspicions even before the parents of Louis were fully informed. This was the detail that Princess Anne was believed to find particularly important, because it did not involve only medical decisions. It also involved the way information was controlled inside the family. According to some sources close to the family, after reviewing the records, Anne sought a private conversation with Catherine. The discussion was never officially confirmed, but many observers believe it became a crucial moment in the entire story. During that exchange, Anne was believed to acknowledge that Catherine's original instinct about the need for earlier medical examinations may have been completely correct. One sentence repeated many times in later analysis was believed to come from that conversation. Anne reportedly told Catherine that she had been right from the beginning. If the documents reviewed by Anne truly reflected the sequence of events, then the delay may not have been only a temporary decision to manage communication. It could have been part of a longer strategy lasting many months in order to avoid triggering a strong public reaction. But information control systems like this rarely last forever. As more people within the family began questioning the missing timelines, pressure on the palace increased rapidly. And once the truth started moving beyond the sealed walls of the palace, the story was no longer just a private matter for the Windsor family. The entire nation began paying attention. When the first reports suggesting that the palace may have delayed responding to Prince Louis' health condition began appearing in media discussions, the public reaction moved much faster than royal advisors had anticipated. For many years, internal matters of the Windsor family had usually been managed quite effectively through official statements and carefully designed communication strategies. But this time, the story involved a child who was only 7 years old, and public opinion responded in a very different way. At first, posts appearing on social media mainly questioned the delay in confirming medical information. However, within a short time, these discussions began spreading across many different platforms. One phrase quickly became the center of online debate: the hashtag Justice for Louis. Many people argued that if early reports had already existed beforehand, the boy's family should have been fully informed much earlier in order to make timely medical decisions. According to media data analysis companies, the scale of this wave of discussion was far larger than most royal controversies in recent years. Within the first 72 hours after the story began spreading, more than 2 million posts across social media platforms directly mentioned concerns about transparency in how the palace handled information. Many observers described it as the largest public reaction involving the monarchy since the public disputes that followed the death of Princess Diana. Public attention did not stop at online discussions. In the following days, several civil groups began organizing peaceful gatherings near Westminster and outside Buckingham Palace. These gatherings were not large-scale demonstrations in the traditional sense, but they continued for 5 consecutive nights and attracted significant attention from international media. Most participants were asking for something quite simple. They wanted to know whether information about Prince Louis' condition had truly been delayed within the palace. Some people carried signs asking the royal family to be more transparent whenever issues involving children's health and rights appeared within the system. Public pressure quickly spread into the political sphere as well. In the British Parliament, several members of Parliament began raising questions about the level of transparency within internal royal mechanisms, particularly when those decisions could affect individuals within the line of succession. A few short discussions were introduced during parliamentary sessions about whether regulations related to medical information and the privacy of royal family members might need to be updated in a modern context. Constitutional experts emphasized that these discussions did not mean that Parliament was directly interfering in the private lives of the royal family. However, the fact that the story had rapidly become a political subject showed that public concern had already moved far beyond the boundaries of a family matter. In that environment, advisors inside Buckingham Palace began realizing that the traditional strategy of silence which had often been used during sensitive situations, might no longer be effective. With every passing hour, the number of articles, comments, and analyses continued increasing, along with wider speculation, pressure from public opinion. Media coverage and parliamentary discussions created a situation the palace could no longer easily avoid. Eventually, all attention began focusing on a single person who could make the next decision: King Charles. Under growing pressure from the public, the media, and even internal family debates, King Charles was finally forced to deliver an official response. For several days before that moment, advisors at Buckingham Palace had been considering different communication strategies. However, once the story had become a national conversation across Britain, the only remaining option was to announce a clear and constructive step forward. The statement released by the palace emphasized two important points. First, the royal family confirmed that Prince Louis would retain his title and his position within the family. There were no plans to change the boy's status in any way. Second, King Charles announced the creation of a new initiative called the Prince Louis Foundation. It was described as a support fund for families with children suffering from chronic illnesses or rare neurological disorders. According to the initial announcement, the foundation would focus on three main areas. The first area was financial support for medical research programs aimed at improving early diagnosis of neurological conditions in children. The second area was helping families gain better access to long-term care services, which are often extremely expensive and complex. The third area was raising public awareness about the challenges families face when caring for children with chronic conditions. One detail that drew considerable attention was the expected scale of the program. According to the plan released alongside the statement, the Prince Louis Foundation aims to support more than 10,000 children living with chronic illnesses during its first 5 years of operation. If this target is achieved, it would become one of the largest charitable initiatives ever launched directly in connection with a young member of the royal family. For many observers, the decision carried not only humanitarian meaning, but also represented an attempt to close a tense chapter. Instead of continuing to debate what may have happened behind palace doors, the royal family appeared to be shifting the focus toward helping families facing similar situations. A few days after the statement was released, key members of the royal family appeared together at a public event. William, Catherine and their children stood beside King Charles on the palace balcony in a rare moment that suggested unity after several weeks of intense pressure. For the public, that image carried a clear message. Despite the controversy and the doubts that had surfaced, the Windsor family was trying to move forward, and within this difficult story, hope still had a place. The story you have just heard is not simply an internal dispute within the Windsor family. It raises a larger question about how the monarchy handles truth, responsibility, and public trust in an age of transparency. What happened with Prince Louis may become a turning point that forces the palace to change the way it confronts crisis. But whether that change will truly happen is something many people are still watching closely. If this video made you think, please like, share, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you do not miss the next analysis. And leave a comment below. Do you believe the royal family will truly change after this scandal? See you in the next video. At Buckingham Palace, where every detail is meant to be perfectly orchestrated, a statue that was supposed to be purely symbolic has instead plunged the royal family into turmoil. A secret statue of Queen Camilla, erected without King Charles's official approval, has ignited a storm within palace walls, and when the news broke, the king reportedly lost his composure. He immediately summoned an emergency meeting not just to demand who allowed this to happen, but to confront a far more unsettling question. What exactly is Camilla plotting? According to multiple palace insiders, the statue was placed in a sensitive location within the palace grounds, a spot once reserved for the late Queen Elizabeth II's memorial. Camilla's decision to claim that sacred space for herself has enraged several senior royals. The public, too, has begun to wonder, was this an innocent oversight, or a calculated move to assert dominance from a woman long regarded as the intruder in Britain's most tragic love story? Ironically, while the royal family struggles to rebuild its image amid scandals and the king's health concerns, Camilla seems to have stirred chaos once again. As some observers wryly note, true power doesn't need to be carved in stone yet for Camilla. Perhaps even a statue isn't enough. And so, this late-night royal summit may not simply be about quelling a palace embarrassment, but about confronting a deeper truth. Is the crown itself being manipulated from within Buckingham Palace? At dawn, the United Kingdom awoke to disbelief. Before the gates of Buckingham Palace stood not Elizabeth, not Diana, not even Charles, but Camilla. Inside the palace, witnesses say Charles dropped his teacup in shock upon seeing the image. Was Camilla driven by sudden envy? Or was this a meticulously calculated bid to usurp England's most sacred symbols? Now the question remains. Faced with such defiance, will Charles stay silent, or will he make history by delivering the most dramatic exile since the reign of Elizabeth II? On the morning of October 9th, L'Ancienling Archevaux, Britain awoke to a shock unlike any in its modern history. As the first slivers of sunlight broke through London's fog, guards stationed at Buckingham Palace were met with an astonishing sight. In the very center of the royal courtyard stood a massive bronze statue of Queen Camilla that had appeared overnight. No one knew who authorized it. No one had witnessed trucks, crânes, or any sign of installation. Yet there it stood, bold and immovable, as though it had always belonged there, defying both tradition and time itself. Within minutes, the news exploded across the nation. Reporters rushed to the palace gates. Cameras and microphones pressed against the black iron fences, where the golden royal crest gleamed faintly through the mist against the gray morning sky. Camilla's bronze likeness gleamed with an eerie brilliance, both regal and unsettling. This was no gentle or benevolent portrait. Her expression was austere, chin raised high, lips tightened, eyes fixed directly on Buckingham's front gates, a sight historically reserved for statues of late monarchs. Crowds quickly gathered. People pointed, murmured, filmed, and shared their disbelief online. A statue of Camilla in front of Buckingham.